Here we are. Okay. Hello, everybody. Let's see everybody come in. I think we're live. So, today, what I'm going to be doing is going through Bitwig. I have no idea how it works. I have never used it before. And I want to try it out because I've always said that Bitwig to me doesn't offer any, how should I say this? Doesn't offer any selling points that are worth switching over. But I kind of, talking about it, everybody says always you should try it, you should try it. And I just want to see what the hype is about. This is the demo version, so I'm not going to be able to save any project. So this isn't definitely like switching over to Bitwig or anything. I just want to have a more informed opinion about the software whenever it is like being brought up. Because it's brought up so often nowadays. Like every time people see that I use Ableton religiously and that I'll defend Ableton and its flaws, its many flaws, they think that Bitwig will just solve my problems. And I want to see if that's true. Because maybe it is. Maybe it is some magical piece of software that every time I've seen it being used just looked clumsy to me without me knowing exactly how it worked or why it worked in a certain way. So that's definitely a possibility. What I've done is I've logged into it. I've looked up how to use the browser and how to add my plugins and my samples and those things. So I have a little bit of experience in that regard. I don't have to set up anything at the start. I think it will be easy. But I want to go into this from the perspective of a new user, and specifically kind of like a new user who, because I'm live streaming, I can just ask. Yeah, Dash is here. I could just ask Dash. Yeah, he even offered. I could just ask him for help and get things done, but that's not what the average, like typical user is going to experience. So I'm not going to ignore the chat, but I'm going to try not to look at it so much that it's going to influence like how my first time perception is. Because I think it's important for new users, if people want to see, oh, he's trying out Bitwig, maybe this is something interesting for me. I want to kind of simulate their first way of getting into it. So Bitwig opens up like this. I don't know if it always does. Maybe it's because I'm running the demo version. But yeah, you have recent projects and all kinds of different things here. So it's really easy looking at it to get started. I only can make new projects because, again, this is the demo version. There's settings here as well. Different ways. This is packages that I might need to install. Do I need to install them, or I think I'll just use my own samples for now. So these are all of my devices here, and then I can go through and get into the different browsers that I have. So if I want to use samples, I can go into here. This opens up all my different sample libraries. There's a lot of different stuff in here, but I can, for example, take a kick. Go to the psychedelic intelligence pack. What I like about the browser, what I've already noticed, is that it keeps multiple things open, which is something that FL Studio did as well. So this just allows you to quickly go from one kicks folder to another kicks folder, and Ableton doesn't do this. Ableton closes them up every time. That does mean that whenever you're navigating to someplace new, it is easier to navigate and you have to scroll less. It's a little bit of a different design option. What I really like is that it's like two-tiered, so all of the different files within the subfolders kind of show up here. That's definitely pretty interesting. There's no sound. Do I need to hit? Okay. That's something to get used to. Yeah, there's a specific play button, and this is some kind of favoriting system. I assume that you can... Favorites. Yeah, if I add this to the favorites, it shows up. Okay, so that's pretty neat. But you cannot have... Could I have this location... Because favorites only has two things. These collection. If I have few collections, can I also have locations open? Okay. Strange. Bottom right panel, there is an autoplay button. Yeah, sure. I shouldn't be looking at this. But there is an autoplay button, yes. Okay, so I have a kick. I need to set some kind of BPM. Here, I assume. Let's make some nice speedy sidetrans. And then I want to... Can I duplicate this? Can I select? If I select it, no. Like this. Okay. Oh wow. Oh, so you have to be really careful where you put your mouse, because look at how many things change the behavior of the mouse. There's clip length. I assume this is fade, yes. Which is actually kind of what I want, because I want my kick like this. Can I at least like consolidate it? Ooh. If I do like this, okay, that makes a bigger clip. Does that render, would that render a new audio file somewhere, or just make the clip bigger? Okay, so it just makes a clip, I think, because the sample gets cut off here. So that means that this wouldn't be a good way to create new samples. Here we have an audio track. Let's clean some things up here. Can I make this smaller? I want my timeline to take up as much space as possible. I don't think I want the scenes. I want this one to collapse. Okay, so this means that this is the smallest the track can go. Okay. I can search, right? We'll just make a quick kick and baseline. It's not going to save anything, so if I put things in favorites, it wouldn't save, I think. After I turn this off, I've already explored it a little bit. As I said, I added my samples, made sure that everything loaded up and stuff like that. Made sure that the audio engine was working, so I didn't have to struggle with all of that very, very basic stuff. Let's make like an offbeat bass, I guess. Oh, that's right. One thing I couldn't get to work was keyboard input. Even though it says computer keyboard here, I assume if I set it to this, and if it's armed, then it will just work. But it doesn't. Touch keyboard. If I take all inputs, right? Monitor mode. Is this? Off, auto, on. Caps lock, no. No caps lock. Or do I need to turn it on for that to work? Nope. I'm assuming that it's the same keyboard shortcuts as, or the same way that you play it as Ableton, since the development team is the same. I just kind of assume that it's porting over a lot of those different things. It seems to be doing things. Wait. This just turned on. Computer keyboard note input. Still nothing. Do I need to... Where's Serum, by the way? Oh. For me, cap locks enables MIDI QWERTY. I'm pressing all kinds of buttons on the keyboard. It's not doing anything. It's not making any sound. Settings. Now my webcam is right at where this little Bitwig button is. So I just move you guys a little bit. Settings. Controllers. No. I don't want you to create fades. That's annoying in Ableton 2. This is the same in Ableton. They come with creating fades as default. Controllers. MIDI. Wait. Why does that not just work standard? You want to add QWERTY as MIDI. I just want to use my normal keyboard like I can in Ableton, where I just hit A, W, S, E, D, F, T, G, Y, H, U, and J, and K. Just a normal standard typing keyboard. The computer keyboard. No crazy MIDI thing here. Is that not... Serum input is set to all MIDI inputs. Serum... The Serum track all ins. This, right? Do I need to turn that on? Aha! Okay, so this needs to be either on or auto. And then I need to enable caps. No. Then I need to enable this. Does that M turn it off? No. Okay, so there's a shortcut to turn this mode on, but not to turn it off again. Yeah, it's M to turn this button on. Right, so this was the button. If you don't use that, then it's just going to use normal keyboard shortcuts. And then if you turn it on, it's going to work. But then if you hit the button again, it doesn't turn off again, so you can't get back to your shortcuts. Or is there a different way? No. Okay, so now I'm suddenly erasing things. There's an eraser. Let's just... It's like that default use. This is the default experience. Yeah, there's nothing strange here. I'm assuming to make a clip, not Control M, Control J, so the normal consolidate makes a clip. Can I now not listen notes here? Does the... Yes, okay. So octaving does work. Where's the note? Pen tool. Drag, rectangular selection, Control Alt drag, pan. I just want notes. And I have pen, right? Why is it not selecting anything? Do I need to... Okay. What was that? Does this now work? Does this now show? Okay, at least it does that. Okay, so now I want to duplicate it. I need to change system. Is there just not a... Oh wait, you can just add them. I had the kick selected before. It said kick on the left next to the piano roll. Wait, you can go into the piano roll and then kick? Okay. Let's give this some names. Control R. Always learn your shortcut keyboard. Your keyboard shortcuts. Sorry. Bass. Immediately forgets them. I'll color this purple, just like in my normal templates. Wait. What happened to my name? Bass. It doesn't... Do you need to confirm it? Okay. Control Enter if you're stuck, can search all functions. Okay, that's useful. And it also shows you the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, let's make a baseline. Okay, I'm just going to quickly make something here. Okay, set this to the volume. And then if we later want some velocity automation, we can do that too. Okay, let's add some processing. So I'm assuming this is just... Yeah, these are all my plugins. And if I go... all file types, all devices, why is M freeform phase not showing? Do I have to... Yes, okay, so here you need to type it in exactly as it is. Which, I mean, when it comes to search functions, it's not the best, to be honest. That's a bit deep. Okay, let's add a saturator. So it finds polysaturator, but it doesn't find the normal saturator. Okay. Okay. Okay, what I need to do is normalize this kick. Because now I think even here the waveform should be completely full if it's peaking at 0. So this kick is definitely not loud. Right now the volume, the gain is at 0. Is there a way to find out what this is peaking at? Mix. -10. What is this volume set at? Why does it default to -10? That's annoying. 0, please. Is there just a way to have to type in the volume? If I go click on it and go 0. Oh, this crushes me. No. No. I'm trying the smallest mouse movement possible and it's not going to go to 0. Triple click. What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say this, but Bitwig is not convincing me at the moment. Okay, so this one is minus 0.8. That can use a little bit, and this is at minus 1.8. So if I add 1.8 dB here, that should be okay. And then this one I want to add 0.8 dB of output gain. And now I can set, if I can set this to like -2, which is the standard difference between my kick and bass. It's going to be fairly loud. I'm just going to group this, which works normally with Control G. And this will be all, and I'll turn this down slightly. Okay, so we have our processing. Now I want to clean it up. Channels default at minus 10 dB because of headroom. Okay. Well, to be honest, I'm just going to be honest here. Unless I find something that I find really, really interesting, that I say, oh, that's neat, that's cool, that's something that I cannot do, and that's going to massively speed up my workflow, I'm not sure that I'm willing to give a new piece of software $400 and a few months of time of like actually getting to know the software and getting to become as fluent as I was within Ableton. Like there needs to be a major improvement, right? And right now, with the way that the controls are going and everything that is setting up, and the way that I'm looking at like what the software just looks like on first glance, like even this group again, the naming and everything, all of those small details, they feel like they're not really as quick as people make it out to be, to me. I don't want to sit here and bash Bitwig and just be in denial, but I do have to be convinced that this is worth the 400 euros and the several months of time of learning the software. So there needs to be something that's convincing me, right? Okay. Let's remove this. What's going on? Hello? Why is the sidechain not removing this? It's doing something. But it's at 0 volume. Check in the scope after. Well, what I just saw was not normal. I'll open up the scope. Scope, Bitwig, wave, no scope. Why did my scope not show up? Size scope. This search function feels... Well, I mean, with no volume it shouldn't output anything. Oh. Oscilloscope. Like, shouldn't it find that if I just type in scope? Isn't that, I'm sorry, but isn't that what the point of a finder is, so that you don't have to know exactly where it is in the list? Like if I'm using the finder, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. That's why I search. If I knew exactly where, or if I knew exactly that it was oscilloscope, I would just go to wherever the oscilloscope is in the list. Give me 2 seconds, I need something to drink for this. Okay, so let's see here. My LFO tool is not doing anything, despite it being at no volume whatsoever. Apparently I can... Ooh. Now this is interesting. This I like. There's something to like here. You can automate the Y and maybe even the X position. No, just Y position. And doesn't like... It doesn't like the X position. Is there a way to show all of the parameters? Like there's an... This doesn't do anything. No remote control page. Or is this... Ah, this is scrollable. Oh, and then I could be selecting the X of whatever point I want as well. Right, so I would be able to select... Yeah, you could automate LFO tool points. You can put LFO steps on it. Yeah, but I want LFO tool. I want to use the tools that I know how to use. What good is a DAW if, apart from having to learn the DAW, I also have to learn a whole new tool set? That's going to just take me even more time. What I'm looking for is a way of seamlessly, if I'm going to transition into Bitwig, I want to do it as seamlessly as possible. Because I want to spend as less time as possible adapting to new things and as much time as possible enjoying the benefits that might come from switching DAW, right? So if I'm going to switch, there needs to be there needs to be a big selling point that says, oh, this is something that I can do, that I want to do, but I can do that only in Bitwig, which I'm pretty sure I won't find right now. So this is just me experimenting once in a while. I might run the demo a few times, something like that, and maybe I'll convince myself, maybe I won't. LFO tool assignment on volume is 3. While pattern is set to 1. Okay. Now it's 9. Please stay there. Oh, I can automate that. If I set that... Is this... This? Yes. Okay, so if I set this to 0, now it should stay, right? No. I do like that you're able to or can you? Does this just now reload something then? No. Okay. Delete. I can just place it in here. I like that. I like that the browser is kind of like a pop-out. You probably, if you're going to get into Bitwig, you'll probably want to open it up so that it always opens up in favorites and just shows you the list of plugins that you actually use. Okay, so I'm setting up a sidechain. It's at 1. I don't change it. and I set up the shape that I want, which is this. Slight fade in. And it goes to 9. What? What? Why? As soon as it plays, can I force it to go if I continue to? If I move this back and forth into the 1 section and just quickly like snap to 2 and then back to 1, it will reset. Maybe use 9 as the pattern. Well, that's not really a solution. That's just a workaround. I want to know why this is happening. Why would this trigger to go to... I mean, sure, this will work, but then I'm forced to use pattern 9 every time? Just check my LFO tool, it's fine. Then what's going on here? Let's now see if SideScope says. Yeah, we're doing the sidechaining that I want to do, so at least that's there. Okay. Without too much hassle, let's just see if we can make a beat out of this. Control D just duplicates, which is nice. I'm gonna have to get used so much to everything being on the right here. I've had it on the left for 9 years. No, not 9 years. Yeah, no. I've had it on the left for 10 years almost. In January, I've been making stuff for 10 years. Making music for 10 years. Okay. I need to re-enable this. Let's just go like a standard hat. Drums are orange. Duplicate, wait. There's going to be, okay. You cannot hold Control D for it to work. You have to hit it every time. I don't like that you cannot really just select. Like you have to select down below. If you select too close to in the middle, I think. If you select at the top half, it's just going to be selection. And if you select at the bottom half, it's going to be with timeline. Okay. Please loop your bar. Isn't it looped? Transport loop, yes. Now it's looped. Also, I don't like that it's numbering the clips. I don't know why, but it's confusing to me. Obviously, I'm not used to it, so maybe that's why. Let's go up 1. Like here. Oh, that's cool. But again, only the top half. Ooh. does the selection. I mean, there's a similar kind of thing in Ableton, but at least in Ableton there's like a clear line between those two areas. I can kind of see it being slightly less dark here, right? Or slightly darker here and slightly less dark here. It's a little bit easier to see on the baseline. Maybe different colors make it easier. Well, not really. To be honest, it's hard to see. It might be my screen settings. Maybe it doesn't come through like on YouTube. Wait. Search at the top. Yeah. You kept scrolling back in the timeline manually before. Ah. Rather just drag the clip longer from the right. You will see a small icon. It's the best workflow. No. Or is it the... Ah. Why did that make my group disappear? Okay, but that's not exactly what I wanted. What I would want is... Can I now consolidate? Delete? And then make it longer? Okay. Next question. I want to see my kick and bass on the size scope. So I would like to get to sidechain inputs. Show plugin sidechain. All kick post. Now, SideScope is particular in that it has 3 sidechain inputs, not just 1. So, can I select that? Or does Bitwig just treat it as if it has 1 sidechain input? I don't know, let's just see what's happening here. Wait, what's going on? Why is that 1 note? It's the same thing. It's doing the sidechaining thing again wrong. It changes here based on the note. Do you see? If I play this note, it goes to 10. Watch. Right here. It goes to 10. That's why the note got quiet, because then it played this pattern. Why is it sending MIDI to my LFO tool? Why would you want that? What? Can I stop? Modulators. I don't want you. Remote control page. Hello, MindB. Welcome to the most confusing stream ever. Put a MIDI note filter before. A MIDI note filter. Note filter. Vocoder. Bitwig device. It's not an issue in my Bitwig / LFO tool. MIDI effects. No MIDI effects. Oh, this. Note effects. Note filter. Ah. Okay. Okay, so now it's filter. I want to remove everything. C-2 to G8, all velocities, everything. Actually, filtering for notes is pretty cool. That's actually might be a cool way to sequence synths in some kind of way, by just setting up a whole bunch of different chains and then having different filters for each note and then having them play the same note. I assume what you would be able to do, we'll try this later, I have a creative idea here. But now, okay, so now technically I could just use pattern 1 always. Okay, let's delete this and make this also into a loop. No, not like that. Like this. Yes. And then I assume that you want me to make my kick into a loop as well. Or should I make just like 8-bar sections? I do like how dynamic the workflow seems to be in here, in that you can basically just make clips out of anything. I mean, you can do the same thing in Ableton, but then it consolidates it into a new audio file, like automatically. It would be nice if there was a distinction for that. Group them, make a preset fix for next time. Well, yeah, no, this is the demo, so I cannot actually save anything. I might be able to save presets like this. Can I just group them? Okay, instrument layer. Is this a group? Note filter. It's okay, so it's showing that this is a collect, like put together. I assume that's going to be in here then. Can I make that shorter? Then it's just size scope. Yeah, so I could save this somewhere then. Save. Yeah, I cannot save anything because this is the demo. But technically you could save this as your LFO instance and then it will just show up. I don't see why you would want by default to send your MIDI to LFO. What I'm assuming is happening is that anything that gets MIDI, that takes MIDI input on this channel, will just take the MIDI that's on the channel. Which, I mean, that could be useful in very small condition of cases. Like what you normally would do if you would want, for example, say, serum effects, right? Serum effects, really nice effects bundle because it's just all of serum. If I go, I should just use this, serum effects. If you want to do anything with serum effects in terms of like time related or use the oscillators or whatever, then you want to send MIDI to this. Normally the way that you do that is that you have to make a new track in Ableton, which is like an empty MIDI track. MIDI. I'm assuming instrument track. And then you would set input and output here from the track back into itself, and then you can select the exact device that you want to send input into, which is very cool because then you have a lot of control, but it's also very slow and it messes up your project if you're doing it a lot, right? So it's a little bit of a waste of time, but you don't end up in the situation where you activate LFO tool and without anything, without you knowing, it just sends MIDI to it. I think that the default option of only sending MIDI to the first instrument that gets it, like the synth that's on there, is kind of the standard way to do it. Yeah, for key tracking effects and modulating things, yeah. It makes projects much less messy. But say, for example, here. Okay, I'm going to ask you this. Say that I want to do a MIDI tracked device right here. Right? Any MIDI track device. Let's say Serum. Right? Serum effects. I want to get MIDI into this Serum effects because I want to do something with the MIDI in here. I think you can use the note modulator and the velocity modulators. Say things like that. Is there a way then for me to just send it to this Serum? Because if I now remove this, it's also going to go for it. If I remove this, for it to go to here, or will it then bypass the group? Like I wanted to do it in 0, right? So here's what I want to do. Say, let me draw it. We have boxes. Let's make them nice and big. We have our synth. We have our... I should make it a little bit smaller. We have our synth. We have our LFO tool. And we have our Serum effects. Sound goes from here, there, to there. What if I want to send MIDI to this one and this one, but not this one? This one, no MIDI. I believe filter only applies in the layer, or you can set the MIDI inputs to pre the filter. Okay. MIDI inputs. So post effects chain. Let's see if this works actually. Let's see if that first theory is correct. Before the Serum sets input to note filter pre. Make a note receiver device. Note receiver. Okay. And then here I can go to... Can I not just go to the chain? Like to the base? What? Note filter is pre. Okay, so they're all like before whenever this thing is, right? Just a test here to see if it's now... It's not moving around. I would assume that if it was receiving MIDI. I don't want you to mute anything. Okay, so I think there's like a dialog here that shows MIDI activation. Maybe it's because if I turn this off, it continues. And now it's doing it. So if I turn this off, it will still continue, right? Okay. Which means that what Dash said before about it being local to the chain, like this just only blocks MIDI inside of this chain, then it makes sense. it just stops it in the chain, and then the MIDI kind of continues outside of it. Because this... No, wait. This is fully serial. So it should stop here and then not stop. It just ignores anything that's in the note filter when it comes to MIDI, I guess. For some reason the MIDI pad splits up, but that wouldn't be the same as like the audio path. Okay. Okay. Let's add some instruments. Let's try to make some music here. Phase plant. Let's make a little synth. You know what? Since Dash is here, I think I have some of his stuff here as well. Let's see. Okay. Wait, I'm hearing two things. First of all, I hear that my bassline should be set to envelope, which it now is. Second, if I select this thing, it's also going to send MIDI here. And the MIDI playback is not delay compensated. Because there's a lot of delay because of this freeform phase. Which, can I just turn that off? Why is this always triggering? Or do I need to... Yeah, you need to set it to automatic. Triple click to set this to 0. My camera is in the way of the MIDI settings. My camera is always in the way somewhere. Maybe this? Maybe this is a better way. Obviously, if I were to switch to Bitwig, I would have my own camera settings and make the interface work around Bitwig like it does for both Reaper and Ableton. Because in Ableton it's just like the browser window, not really that interesting. Yeah, but here you need to... This is important. This needs to be set to auto for it to play whenever you just select it. Okay. Let's make a clip. That's high. Wait. Can double click to also add a new clip. Okay, so if I were to make a new instrument, I'm annoyed. I'm used to Reaper. So a little thing about Reaper is that it has the same kind of browser, although much less sophisticated. It's, first of all, it's all light color, which I hate. I like the dark color theme of Bitwig a lot. So there it's just one list of different filter types. You can go like favorites, certain collections, or certain manufacturers, certain types. All of that stuff is there, but it's all like clocked up in one list. But the big thing that the Reaper does is if you search anything, it keeps that search for the next time that you open up the browser. Which, if I wasn't using Reaper, I wouldn't really notice that doing, or that not happening in Bitwig, but seeing as the only part where I'm kind of used to having the browser pop up like that, and now having it do it differently, it's a little bit strange. But I don't think that's anything to write home about. That's something, again, that you kind of get used to, I guess, after a while. This was the one we already had. I guess I don't want this to trigger. Never trigger. Okay, so if I double click, it makes a normal clip. And then I can hold it above to just extend it, and then hold it below to loop it. And then it shows that it's looping. The first loop point is like glowy, I guess, for some reason. Or is that just... No, it's bigger. The first loop point is bigger, and then that shows you kind of where the end is, I guess. Which, I mean, could be useful. Why are both of my faceplants faceplant number 1? I hate that I cannot just select the length that I want to duplicate by holding Shift. You can change the size by grabbing the glowy part. Aha! That's so strange. I guess could be cool for like experimental music. Technically now we have some kind of polyrhythm going on. Okay, I want to go back to looking at peak levels, because these two synths, they don't work together in terms of like level. Or is it... Ah, because it puts things outside of the group. Is there a way that I can just see the peak levels of all of the tracks? Like I can see for the individual track here that I need to add 3 dB for this to be like normalized, right? So I would go in here and then get some kind of gain. Is there just not a Bitwig gain or volume? Level? Anything? Amp. Okay, so no, that's not what I want. I just want to turn up the level. Dynamics. Loud split. This is all the stuff that the drama was about. Hey. Test on tool. Tool gives me volume. It's like the utility in Ableton. Volume and gain. I'm assuming that gain somehow overdrives. On the right of the mixer window, there is an icon of 2 lines. Show big meters. Aha! Oh, wait. Does that mean I can turn this off? Oh, that looks amazing. This can be done in Ableton, but Ableton really doesn't like this kind of workflow where you have the these things show up. I think in Ableton there's a little bit of a hack built into how it works. The Ableton mixer, you can get it to look exactly like this if you want it to. Apart from that, this is all a little bit less bulky, and what they will do is they'll have the levels right next to the meters, right here, which I like. But the way that they handled this, where they show you the list of devices that you have on there, first of all, Ableton really likes to throw all of this shit down your throat, right? All of the scenes and everything. That's kind of the session mode's whole thing. It's not really a mixer, it's a session mode. And I think this is kind of the same thing in that it has the same session mode capabilities as Ableton. But most people ignore this because it's mainly built for live performance. But what... I'm assuming that there's some way to have the level right next to your mixer level. That's just nice to look at, like, visually, because it shows you immediately if the level that you're peaking at is your actual mixer level. In settings, you can dial some stuff in for the mixer window here too. Okay, behavior. User interface. I'm assuming somewhere in here. Mixer. Not for parallel views though. Yeah, that's what I would want. Some kind of way to see that if... Because now I have to look at here, which again, it's not that big of a deal. I should probably clip this if I want to do this correctly. Clip shifter. Good clipper. We'll give it 2 dB and then it should reach a decent amount of the times. Yeah, I could technically just see that this is at 0 dB now, which would make it normalized, right? Because this mixer level is also set at 0 dB. This choice of what elements to prioritize though. Can I not just move this up and down? Like if I want this mixer to be slightly smaller and this device stuff to be slightly smaller so that I don't have to fiddle with things like this. In the inspector. Yeah, this. This is kind of how how Ableton does it by default. I'm seeing the lines here, right? This line and stuff right here. I would hope that there was some way to just kind of make this part a little bit bigger, the slider itself. I guess you could move to here, but then you can only do one at a time. Also, can you really only just go from... I guess that's the same with Ableton. I shouldn't criticize too much because that's what I'm used to. But that also means that it isn't an improvement. Large clip height. That doesn't do anything. Show device change. Okay, so I can make the level bigger. Show effect sense. There's no effects in there, so that doesn't do anything. Show I/O routing. That's all good. This is all kind of normal Ableton stuff. Effects tracks, you can hide them. Show deactivated tracks. I like that. Show crossfade settings. Ah, so there's like a global crossfade for DJing. Which, I mean, I guess is cool. Okay, so you just from standard you cannot make these bigger without going into the inspector and using that. And then even then you have to click in the right place. Okay. To be honest, I'm gonna be completely honest here. When I heard everybody talk about Bitwig and them saying it's like Ableton but with all of the annoyances taken out, I was expecting more of the annoyances that I'm like having with Ableton be taken out. Like this still feels like a very limited like interface, which is kind of what they inherited from Ableton, because Ableton is in the same way. So to me it doesn't really feel like an upgrade. Okay, let's normalize this. Jesus Dash, these are very, very dynamic. These presets. Let's do some simple things here. Want to EQ some stuff out before. Okay. I'm assuming that there's a way to make it bigger. Yeah. So this is pretty normal, like Ableton size. I think one of the criticisms that Ableton always had, and I think Bitwig will get the same, is that by default the window is so small. Can I... They do have more filters, which I'm a fan of. And then this is just normal. Can scroll here for the Q. This will change the Q. Is there a way to like quickly change filter types then? All Bitwig devices have a big window too. Okay, so if I were to go into here and tool then, or maybe tool not, but most of them, yeah, they have the pop-up. Well, Ableton ones also have this pop-up for the EQ and stuff and anything for which it's important. Yeah, not tool. No. Here again, this just feels like an Ableton EQ. I'm not going to lie. It's like Ableton EQ, but with a few added filter types. Okay. So yeah, one thing, you have to make a point first before you can edit it. In Ableton, that's not the case. Say that I wanted to create or have a bell but not turn it on immediately. I could edit the bell without it being turned on. If you don't select anything here, it's just not going to show up. Which, I mean, I guess what you could do by default is just create a preset which has everything enabled, which is what I do in Ableton anyway. I did note, is there a way to show knobs for this? Because now it just shows you numbers. which isn't the most inspiring way to do it, I would say. Is this knob? Oh yeah, there is. Oh, that's nice. Device page, frequencies, cues. Okay. You can quickly switch between them, I guess. Because in Ableton, this is just part of the plugin itself. I am assuming that these are like the macros. I mean, you do have everything over here as well. The reason why I say all of this is how should I say this? What I'm looking for is, one, improvements, and two, one of the things that I've been looking into for these kind of improvements is just like overall design. And one, I did a little bit of design when I was in university studying computer computer science, I should say. It's actually applied computer science, but it wasn't really that applied. But two, where I'm getting this from, the knobs from, is there's this guy on YouTube who is like an actual designer for MuseScore. I'm going to shout out his channel. I'll put it in the chat. He's massive, so most of you might know him. Tentacruel almost has 300,000 subscribers. Yeah, Tentacruel. He is a very big guy in terms of design, and he comes up with this idea that within music software, knobs are very liked because it shows you extremities. Like, I can immediately see that this frequency is very high frequency. I don't have to look at the exact value and think, oh, where's that going to be on the spectrum? A knob will just tell you it's very close to the high end, right? So Ableton does this for all of them. If you open up a EQ like this, it just puts all of these knobs in here. And then you have all of them at once, right? So if I go in here, there's frequency. I can see the frequency. I can see the Q factor if it's small or large. I can see the gain here if that's small or large. And I can see which is turned on and which types they are. It's the same information. It's about the same size, but you also get the information of in regards to what limit. So you get a little bit of extra information, I would say. This here, I mean, it's cool that they set up. What I like is that they set up like macros for you. I'm assuming that this is some kind of system, right? Because this is in the control page, this control page thing, which I'm assuming is just kind of like a default mapping or a mapping that you can set up. Yeah, you can set up like presets and pages and everything. If I were to do shift here now, does that not, or do I have to? Yeah, you can set up your own version here. Right, you can set up your own pages, that whatever you want. So I guess that's very cool. That's a lot more customizable. But it doesn't show you all of the information at the same time. I didn't make any changes. Either way, rant over. Not that important. It's all small things. At the end of the day, I could, let's be honest, if I had started with Bitwig when I switched over from FL Studio to Ableton, I would have probably said the same things about Ableton than I'm saying now about Bitwig. It's because I'm used to the other. But that's not the point. The point of this whole experiment for me is to see if all of the people who have shifted over to Bitwig over this last, I would say, year now that Bitwig is like really big, they've all found something seemingly useful within the workflow of Bitwig. And I would obviously like to be a part of it. If there is some useful way to make better music in Bitwig, then I would like to do that. I would like to see if that's worth the investment. But what I saw from the marketing was that all of the things in the marketing looked to me like gimmicks and like toys, which is what I said in your server as well. keep trying. Oh, I'll keep trying. I'll try it a few times as well. This is just one chill stream to do it together, but I'll try it in private. Marketing is marketing. Yeah, obviously something like the grid, right? The grids. Is that thing, the whole modular effects grid? Yeah, here you can put all kinds of effects and things in there. I'm assuming that this is all kinds of different cool, customizable shit. This is all very cool, but is this really going to speed up your music workflow, or is this just like Max for Life, a deep dive into something that's only ever going to give you gimmicks? Could be cool if you could change the buttons to click on instead of knobs in the racks. I've made a lot of great devices that speed up your workflow. Yeah, probably. Yeah. My question isn't that there's all of those devices and you could like create those and then pump out music, probably. Right now, the calculation that you have to make in terms of like practical what you're getting out of it is not just, oh, if I switch over to Bitwig, you can use all of these devices to create your music and therefore it will be faster. First of all, you have to put in the time to learn Bitwig. Then you have to put in the time to learn the grid. I've heard a lot of people be very frustrated on how all of this works, and looking at the amount of shit that's in there, I can assume that there's probably going to be a lot of learning that needs to be done here. Right? This is something like VCV Rack or Max for Life. Something that you dive into and won't really ever see the end of until you're like 20 years in. But you can, in the meanwhile, still use it to up your workflow. Maybe you can create a whole bunch of default presets for this, which will generate all of your music for you. At that point, you have to ask, is the time that I invested in learning Bitwig and learning the grid and slowing down my workflow temporarily, is that going to profit in me actually getting a better workflow, or is this just time that I'm going to spend on getting to the same level in a different piece of software? Do you know what I mean? Because I have 6 years of experience in Ableton. And that's the thing with people who, I say this all the time, this is not a Bitwig problem, this is an every DAW problem. Even with Reaper, when I went into Reaper, the only reason why I went into Reaper is what I wanted to do just could not be done in Ableton. There was a core limitation with Ableton on how many files it was able to read from the disk before it just started stuttering no matter what I did. I put it on the SSD, I checked with online forums, I checked around is there ways to just, maybe I have to make the file smaller, maybe I have to see if I can mix in some kind of way that allows me to maybe mix part of the track and then another part of the track and then put them together. Very convoluted workflow. But it could not be done. You could not just have your whole song imported in WAV files into Ableton. So I had to use Reaper for that. Right now I don't feel like Bitwig is solving any problem that I'm actively having. Having a native modular thing is great also for sharing patches. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's 100. I'm not saying that this is. I think I got, when I spoke in your server, I got misunderstood in that people thought that I was saying that all of Bitwig's features were wastes of time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's no feature in there that is being marketed to me, the way that I've seen the marketing for Bitwig and also what I'm seeing from the people who use Bitwig, that seems to me like something that would not only save me time like immediately, but also save me all of the time that goes into learning Bitwig. Because before you can profit from any time saved in Bitwig, you need to subtract the time that you spent learning this new piece of software. That's the point. Obviously, if there was no such thing as an entry-level kind of getting to know Bitwig, then it would be a much easier consideration, because then it would not include me spending several months of my life getting to the same kind of muscle memories like level experience as I am in Ableton right now. I heard Asterix is on Bitwig. I've heard Asterix is on Cubase, and this whole Ableton Bitwig discussion is redundant because Cubase is the best. That's what I've heard. I think it will be much quicker than you think. Probably. But is it quick enough for me to offset the things, the learning curve? That is the question. That's question 1. And question 2, is that worth $400? Because I was on Cubase and it was a very quick switch. Yeah, I guess one of the things here is that... Hello? It has never done that before. Did my stream actually went down? No. Hello? My OBS has never done that. Either way. But it's back. Okay. Strange. Very strange. As I was saying, something like the sidechain not working is not something that a new user is going to pick up on. But for me, I heard that there was something wrong. I saw it in the size scope, and we were able to finally catch on to that Bitwig actually sends MIDI notes to multiple places. Whatever. For me, the switch is probably going to be faster than the switch was to Ableton from FL. Because then I also needed to learn a lot about just music, right? I wasn't... I mean, I'm still learning. I'm not saying that I'm finished learning, but I have enough understanding of the basics of audio to see when something is not working the way that I want it to work. Yeah, that's what Greedo is saying is the same for me. I've spent 6 years working up it's not just the overall workflow, it's also like muscle memory, right? If I were to switch to Bitwig, I would need to retrain to not look for plugins over here, to not look for samples over here, but to start looking down there. Those are small things that lose you seconds of time every time that you have to do it, which amount to very long times over the duration of a whole project. Okay. Say now that I want to arrange this. Can I just move this to like bar 32? Okay. Apparently not. If I zoom out here, control zoom, can I move you? Bar 33, that's where I want to start. I've never seen it and couldn't reproduce it. Okay, but I literally changed nothing. I did nothing. I installed Bitwig, I went into here, and went into the locations to make sure that all of the locations were added. That's it. Took me like a week or two. For me, for Ableton, it's probably going to be even faster. But I'll share a little secret with you. One of the things that I do within Ableton, obviously, for one, I have to put a very big asterisk on this stream and my review of Bitwig in general. I'm probably not going to switch. There's a few things that I'm doing behind the scenes right now with Ableton in such a way that if I were to fully adapt my workflow to Bitwig, I would need to rewrite a whole bunch of code, basically. So if I were to switch to Bitwig, it would maximum be a partial switch. And the reason for that has to do with the music videos that are going to come out very, very soon actually. In 6 days, the first one will be released for the album. And that is the way that I made the animations from the music. Because if you know, animation works by FPS, which is not a nice timing for music, and music works in bars, which is not a nice timing for video. So you need some kind of conversion between them if you want your animations to line up with the music video, which is what I wanted. So I actually had to write a program which went into my Ableton projects and selected individual automation lanes, which I could then convert into animation keyframes for After Effects. That was the idea of that piece of software. Those kind of things, and I have a few things of those going on. I have a bunch of things like that I program in that just work with my my Ableton projects. Because an Ableton project, in essence, is just a zip file around an XML file. So it's really easy to adapt here. I cannot actually test if that's the case with Bitwig until I buy it. And I'm not going to spend $400 just to test that. I mean, if it's the same management team, there is a small chance that there's going to be the same particular infrastructure, right? So I wouldn't have to worry about anything. My point is, with this, not to just stop like making points here. My point is that I want to make sure that every bit of my time that I'm spending on music production is spent efficiently, because that's how you get the most work done, and therefore that's how you get the most best music. That's the point. Nicola, Alex, nice to see you guys. Did you know you can open Ableton projects in Bitwig? Okay, that's not. It's a little bit on the other side. I wrote a program that opens Ableton projects for me, so I can show you actually if I go to Visual Studio. This is a program that I can use to open up Ableton projects, which obviously relies heavily on the way that an Ableton project is structured. So this program, if I go into here, I can show you kind of the interface. I'm not going to compile it for now because that will take a little bit of time. Oh, Visual Studio, please go away. So I can select the file, right, and I can open it, click process, and then it will show me a list of all of the automation lanes that sit within Ableton. I can select whichever automation lane I want, and I set the FPS that I want to target, the BPM that the original project is in, and minimum and maximum values for the keyframes. I can normalize whatever modulation or whatever automation is coming in, and then I can convert it, and it will convert it into keyframe data for After Effects, which is the program that I used to create the animations, to create the music videos. Which, by the way, all have finished and are all scheduled and all posted, everything. So if I were to do something, if I had in the future to do something similar and I had to make the switch over to Bitwig, that's another piece of time that I'm losing, because I would have to reprogram that. So there's more to the switch than just saying, oh, get to learn Bitwig. Sorry, my nail is doing something weird here. I need to clip it. Give me a second. It's annoying me so much. Bit of a mess. So I'm, to be honest, not too optimistic of switching. I wasn't expecting to be like blown out of the water here. But there seems to be, maybe it's the thing with the LFO tool that really kind of scared me off, that just sends MIDI data to every plugin that you put on anything. I wouldn't want to have to deal with every time that I open up a plugin that is new, having to discover that, oh, I need to actually add a filter in front of it or something like that. Maybe it's something wrong with my settings and maybe I can get through it. Maybe this is something that has to do with the demo mode. Same architecture. Clip/automation data is stored exactly the same. Would you be able to, if I send you an Ableton project, seeing as you can open up an Ableton project in Bitwig, would you be able to then save that project as a Bitwig project and send it back to me? Because then I can get that question answered, right? Then we can just look at the XML data. And I can see if I were to make the switch, do I need to rewrite the way that the XML data does? Because the biggest part of programming all of this is in, where is it? There's some part of the code that just has to convert everything, the whole XML data, which is not this. It has to like parse the whole thing. I think I do it in steps actually. I swear there should be, or is it in form? Am I doing it in here? Ah, yeah, here. This is all of the parsing somewhere, I think. All of this mess, which is a mess to write. It looks terrible, I know. All of this, that's all the parsing of the XML file. Here's the stuff for my Bitbox Micro 2. It's an LFO tool thing. What is another plugin of mine that I know accepts MIDI? Like if I were to go harmonizer, harmonizer MB. I think this accepts MIDI as well. Does the MIDI get there? I think that you may need to set up MIDI to go into here. Maybe not. Maybe it is an LFO tool thing. That it's doing some kind of MIDI CC. I'm assuming that it's like MIDI CC that's doing it, right? That the MIDI note CC that is coming in here is just being sent to LFO tool. Where is LFO tool? Oh, this. Ah. This is the group and this is the LFO tool. Where are the buttons now? If I double click, that opens up the buttons. I'm assuming that there's some kind of setup that already makes LFO tool react to incoming MIDI notes set here. Yeah, can be controlled from MIDI notes 24 to 35. Do you see it in the bottom? I'm assuming these all have different MIDI notes that control which thing is set. If there's any other effect that does that, that already has that thing set up, then that's going to work the same way, I assume. I just don't know of any other plugin that specifically does control by MIDI notes. I mean, I know a few of them. I know that a lot of contact libraries have like the lowest bass notes to trigger different ways of like pizzicato, staccato for like strings and stuff like that. Wave Morpher, very interesting point. Yes, this is how I'm looking at Bitwig, in that it is a tool, a fancy new toy, right? And it's not going to overtake my workflow, and after the stream I'm just going to go back to Ableton and do Ableton things back the way that I do it, because I don't see any significant improvement here. Either I would need to spend a lot of my time getting so comfortable with Bitwig that I'm on the same level of productivity again, or I would, before that, need to find one or several features that does this, like that does it for you, right? That actually speeds up your workflow more than you were able to accomplish in Ableton. I wouldn't have any examples of that right now, but maybe if I was in some kind of generative music, I could see this feature being very cool for particular types of music. Not for my workflow, but if there's a feature that does do something like this for my workflow, then maybe that would be considered, then I would consider it an upgrade of my workflow. What my problem is, and I'm now running the demo mode, so I'm not actually paying them. Bitwig does, if you want, from what I know about Bitwig, the pricing scheme is as follows. You buy Bitwig for 400 euros, and then you just get Bitwig. They send you the software and you get to play with it. If you want to maintain updates of the Bitwig Studio, there's an upgrade plan, which means that you pay. I think it's, Dash probably knows. Was it $75? Wasn't it this, or was $75? Because I learned about the whole pricing scheme when the drama came with the splitters, right? The Spectral split. I think it's now just included in here, or loudness split, or whatever it was. Loud split. You could select a certain loudness and then it would go to a different channel. My point would be, for a toy, would it be worth $400 up front and then whatever the upgrade plan cost is for me to have that toy in my arsenal, or is it just going to be like any other plugin that I may have bought on, because I've bought some plugins that I'm not particularly using either. Specifically, this is all free stuff that was included in here, but the one that I'm after, the plugin that I bought, or the plugin bundle that I bought for $100 and that I'm not really using right now, is, look at the amount of shit that comes from the Melda stuff, by the way. The TR5 bundle. I got it for $100 because it was massively discounted. It went from like 2k to $99. So I was like, what the hell, I'll buy it. And since then, I've never really used it, because the only plugin that I was excited for in this bundle was the compressor, which is a de-stressor clone, which is actually supposed to be very, very good, if not better than some hardware models of the original de-stressor. It's not an original de-stressor, but it's like very similar. Turns out this was not part of the bundle that I paid for. A $2,000 bundle, by the way, is the original price. So I want to prevent those kind of misbuys, right? I bought the bundle, I saw that it had this compressor plugin in it. Turns out it's not really in it, it just gets installed on your machine and then you have to pay more for it to actually use. There's more of those like this. I think this Fame Studio Reverb is the same. If I go in here, yeah, this model has not been activated. Do you wish to add a custom shop? Now to try out or purchase this model. All of that stuff. There's a lot of stuff in here, by the way. You still get like 30 plugins for it. So it was still a good deal, but not the deal that I was aiming for. My question will be the same with Bitwig. Is this what I want to spend $400 plus however much a year it costs me to keep getting upgrades to just be a toy if I'm not going to use it as my main DAW? Because I don't see why I should switch DAW right now. Probably if I put in the time and stuff like that, then it can be worth it. But I don't know if I'm ready to take that gamble. I get really bored with the UI of DAWs, so switching between Bitwig, Renoise, Reaper just gives some variation, plus the special features always add some twist. Yes. It gives you a lot of flexibility in Reaper, and Bitwig's modulations are just really clear. Some people spend that kind of money on a synth or plugin. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are very impulse buyers of plugins. Myself included, like that example from before was just an impulse buy. And I don't want to spend 400 euros of money that, frankly, I don't really have right now on a software that is not going to live up to the hype. So that's why I'm trying it. I think right now Ableton as an Ableton owner, it might not be a huge value purchase, but in a while I think you will outgrow the amount of updates that Ableton is pushing. Eventually consider the switch. When you do the switch, will be easy because you've dabbled. I think that's how most of us get hooked. Yeah. You should try modulating the spectral split. It sounds really dope. Spectral split. I am hyped to just try out some specific things for... I'm assuming it's the frequency split, this thing? Yeah, this is one of the things that was in the bundle that they... From an audience perspective, I prefer looking at Bitwig rather than Ableton, but it's probably also because I've spent too much time looking at Ableton. I mean, I can see that. It's more colorful, 100%. Ableton is very boring. Even with the theme that I have, there's like 3 colors in here. And I don't think there's much more that you can do with theming. I don't think there's ways that you can make each frequency band have a different color. Like in Bitwig, this definitely looks more colorful. It also, by the way, is a great way to associate colors with frequencies, what we all like to do. This is also very well done in FL. Say about FL what you want about it being inefficient in terms of a GUI. When it comes to aesthetics, nothing beats FL Studio, in my opinion. Let's try something here. I have this... Does it say which phase plant? I just kind of put this on a chain. I'm assuming that this is the splitter. What am I... Wait, can I not solo this just? Or am I... Okay. See, this is one of... Normally if you hit solo, it counts as a selection. I guess you can hit solo here without selecting the track. So I was actually on the wrong track. Okay, so if we were to use this, we would go into the preset and actually turn off the delay and reverb. Reverb and delay. And you would add that later if you wanted to. I guess this sounds like a cool phaser, but you can select which ones that you want. Splits. Oh, that's the amount of times that it splits the thing. Okay. Can I automate like this up and down? Is there a way to do that? Maybe this? The pinch, yeah. So if I wanted to go, say, positive to negative, I'm assuming that right now this isn't going to do anything because we're not modifying any of the chains. Middle mouse, by the way, by default allows you to move. Very nice. That's not a default feature in Ableton. I have it in Ableton, like I am doing it now, but this is LES, which is the same thing that allows me to quickly insert instruments. If I have like a MIDI track here, I can double click and go Serum. And as you can see, it will search Serum for me and then open it up. This is by far the fastest way to do it, because this is purely based on like memory. Serum for me is the most used synth, so it's at the top. I can just go here and here and just click it. Very, very quick. There's no quicker way to get to Serum. This is not an Ableton feature. So if we're comparing this to Bitwig, it would not be fair to include this kind of movement in Ableton and the way that I'm like adding synths to anything like that. So I wouldn't do that. But I assume that right now, if I want this plugin to actually do anything, I would need to add effects here. I'm assuming that this is going to add it to the chain. So if I add like, say, delay here. Delay 2. I can preview the delays that are in there. If I just want like a ping pong delay. Does this ping pong? You can also hold the middle mouse button and move the cursor up and down to change zoom. Use delay plus. Okay. Ping left. Beats of delay 316. That's going to be dotted 8 notes then? So this is now in the group. Why is the delay still in here, by the way? Didn't I turn it off? Delay is back on. Yeah, so then it just delays that single frequency. I guess that's pretty cool. Now see, this is something that you just cannot... I'm probably going to say you cannot do that in Ableton. There might be some kind of Max for Live device that does the same thing. I'm assuming that all of these split kind of things, all of these devices in here, at some point are going to be made in the Max for Live environment as well, because you could essentially just make this in Max for Live. I think all of the abilities in Max for Live are there. Check the modulators. It's time. Modulators. Show modulators. Okay. What would I want to modulate? Is this soft diffusion network? Ooh. Diffusion. Okay, say that I want to modulate this with an LFO. Let's just do an example. This go there. Why is it now going both ways? How do you... Okay, so now this means that it's unipolar. I should probably make this move a little bit faster, otherwise that effect is not going to come through. Can I not... Wait. Can I not select time like you can here? I thought you would have the same kind of... I guess... because this is divided in two halves, right? I would assume that there would be a way to just do that with the... Or do I need to select it like this, then? All parameters can be modulated with any of those. Yeah, I've seen a few things about this. This is very expensive. I know about, or expansive, I should say. It's very big, the kind of shit that you can do with this. Like, I think you can even I would be able to just take an LFO and modulate like this speed as well. Yeah. Right, so this is very big in terms of the kind of modulations that you can set up with this. Did I now lose my thing that I wanted to pinch? Okay, say that I want to duplicate this automation over, but not the clip itself. Do I need to... Okay, so that works. Right? Why is it not doing it? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this also has modulators then. Everything has it. Even plugins. Okay, wow. Yeah, that is... It's like VCV rack built into your DAW. I assume that this is where the grid exists as well, in the sense that you could put in a grid, right? Because the grid, from what I've seen, is just like this building thing, where you can build anything you want, basically. This is FX grid, right? Say that I wanted to do some very complex modulation stuff with, say, 4 LFOs. Would I be able to do like a... But you can send from grid to a receiver. Okay. Receiver. It's not here. There's a node grid which can generate modulation. Node counter. Okay, but how do I get the modulation to be in here? Oh, wait. Can you do more than 3 then? Because if I add another LFO... Oh. And then you would just macro or take like a mix or something and modulate that mix. Okay, so the LFO shows something here in terms of settings. Maybe the mix is not the way to do that, but if you wanted to like add all 4 of these LFOs together. Add a node grid before as a device, not a modulator. Okay. Effects grid is here. Where be node grid? Do I need to do it like this? Node grids, there. This does make sense now. You can put MIDI effects anywhere. One of the things in Ableton, one of the limitations that you have in Ableton is that you can only set MIDI effects before the instrument, which if you look at it from a normal kind of point of view of, okay, you send the MIDI from the MIDI clip to the MIDI effects to the plugin, then it makes sense. But with Bitwig's apparent ability to affect MIDI stuff later in the chain, like it did here with the LFO tool, where we had to put the node filter in front of it to make sure that it didn't do that. I imagine that having the ability to just put MIDI stuff anywhere makes that very, very interesting. Okay. Gonna get too lost in the sauce. Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm looking, okay, what's going on here? Say that okay, let's do a little example. Forget the node grid. Say that I wanted to just add the modulation of these 4 LFOs together and we set some different frequency for all of them. This one, this one. I don't like that it doesn't... I mean, I guess you get used to it. I expected it to always just be on the side of the modulators, have all modulators kind of like sit here. Is there a way that I can have like a 4 slider mixer? Select 4, that would allow me to select one of the 4 modulations, I assume. You can select them all in open. There's a modulator called math which can sum multiply. Okay, that would be what I need then, math. Let's add 2 signals together. Oh, it's just the output of whatever you add together. We want this to all be unipolar then. Unipolar, unipolar. I think it would be cool to maybe just have this like move. Can you not set the LFO to 0? I mean, 2 is close enough, I guess. Say now that I want to change the modulation amount of this. Oh, it's just this. Okay. Okay, so now this is kind of like an LFO sliding along. I guess we could maybe change the shape up a bit of these, just as an example, right? Just have it make sense. I could then take this and add it here, and it would just need to go, no, it needs to go 100%, yeah. 100%. And then I need another math to add the other 2 together. Oh, I'm in arrangement mode. We don't want that. Add. And then to add the last 2 together, we would need another math here. Now, I think the trick would be in how you kind of like balance them all together. Because if you just add them together, it's going to come up with modulations of like 400. So if I do this, these 2 will add together to 200. And I could have the other math, which is going to also be adding, set this to just 50% or 25%. Because then the maximum could be 50 of this modulation, I hope. Or do we need to set them all to 50%? Hold Alt and click on the modulator to see many at once. Aha. Now that's interesting. Yeah, then I would be able to edit them. But for assignment, that wouldn't really matter. Let's actually check this. If I set both of them to 50, then the maximum is going to be 100. So that's what I would need to do. This one would need to go to 50. And then this one would need to go to 50. I mean, as far as modular systems go, it's a little bit finicky because it's all in like a very small box. But it is very intuitive in the way that it seems to work. Oh, I'm still in edit mode. Does that mean that it's... How can I... Okay, double click removes the assignment. Perfect. Okay, so then this one goes 50. Because it's 50 from the one and 50 from the other. This one here is 50. They're all 50 because we're all combining two full signals into one. So that's what we want to do, right? This one goes from here, goes 50. Now all of these are 50. We know because we can just see kind of where the maximum modulation ends. And these two also should be 50. Maybe they just don't line up and this one isn't going to the maximum, but I believe I set this to, yeah, that looks 50, that looks 50. So then theoretically, we should get a very complex modulation curve from here. Now I want to remove this modulation and use this for maybe the width. And that seems to me like it's adding these two signals together, which is a combination of all four of the modulators. Exactly what we wanted to do. You're already doing really out here with the modulation patterns. Well, technically, this is the same thing that Max for Life offers. Right? If I go in here, I have this stuff. This is Max for Life, right? It's the LFO stuff. This is the same thing. It's even more finicky in that it's very, very small. And I've used this a few times in tutorials as well. But it's basically this thing, and then I think values allows you to do the summing in some kind of way. Like you can select these things to map to. So at the end of the day, it's the same kind of system. But can you save it as a preset with the plugins? Yes. Control G, and then I save it as modulated serum, and then it's just as an instrument rack. This is kind of the same kind of wrapper that you would have with the groups that we had before, right? The instrument layer. So it's not exactly part of the thing itself, which means that it just shows up in a different folder. At the end of the day, that doesn't really matter where it shows up, as long as you know where it shows up and can quickly navigate to it. I think the full potential of this would come, call me crazy here, but say that I have this thing set up here. Can I now save this as a preset of the delay itself? Because that's the... Where is the preset thing anyway? Because with here you seem to have some kind of preset browser. Oh no, wait. Show only automated and modulated parameters. Okay, so that's not a preset browser. Save preset to library. Yeah, it's grayed out. I cannot do that in the demo. It will be a delay plus preset. I think if you think about yourself as a YouTuber and streamer, Bitwig just looks slightly nicer a lot of the time, so thanks for giving it a go. Well, I'm always happy to experiment with new things. Part of what I do as a YouTuber personally is also trying out new things for other people. So that's why I'm doing it. to be honest, I'm not considering switching. I have not seen enough things that makes me say, oh, that really is an improvement to my workflow. And right now, if I were to spend money on like music related stuff, the first thing I would go to would not be a new DAW. Although I'm going to say here, and I'll say it once again publicly, Ableton is far from perfect. If there was an Ableton with a decent delay compensation, with plugin sandboxing, all of those things, that would be a lot better. But this is not that, because this software has other changes to it as well, which I would need to learn. And that's kind of my point here. Then again, you never know, right? You never know. Maybe the next Ableton update is again going to disappoint. There's always the possibility. Ableton is not really that great in terms of like innovation. When you look at how long it took for them to implement VST3, as flawed of a format that it is, and as sketchy as you need to be of VST3, it was an industry standard. Chances are stacked. Yes, I know. I'm very much aware that Ableton isn't really the best software when it comes to innovation. Although, and I was actually at the point where I was going to rant about this on the Ableton subreddit, on how Ableton would need to change their approach to development in order for them to compete with Bitwig, and that it seemed like they were not doing enough. And what I did in a way to try to convince that point was I went through the feature list of all of the Reaper features that were introduced since February 2020, which is when Ableton 11 came out. And I looked at, imagine that thread. Yeah, no, I know. It's not going to be as bad as if you were to put that on the Bitwig subreddit, because the Bitwig stands are much more intense, let's be honest. Ableton stands are on a high level, but Bitwig, man, they're like Elon Musk supporters. It's insane. I'm sorry, I'm going to call you out. It's on another level. They'll defend their software till the end of time. Either way, I looked through the list of all of the features, fixes, and things that were added to Reaper over the time span of the vegans of music production. Yeah, I went over the features of Reaper that were added since February 23rd, 2020, which is when Ableton 11 released, the first full release. And the amount of features that were added was, in terms of just counting them per like line in the changelog, 17,050, something like that. Insane number. And that's like one line is fix, text slightly off-centered, right? So even including small features. So I was like very impressed with the amount of work that was being put in Reaper as a software. That's the kind of thing that I would look at and say, oh, this is a healthy development cycle, which is what, if you're a user of a software, would want from a software, especially if you're paying for every update. Then I went to Ableton, and I think I still have it in my history. Ableton Live 11 patch notes. And I was surprised to see that for as much as people give Ableton slack for not updating their software, this is a massive changelog. Like, the amount of actual fixes that are in here is pretty astonishing to me. This is just version 11. It's not as bad as people think. Probably it could be better. Obviously, there are still issues. I will say there are still issues with Ableton. You have 100% the right to say that. But people say, like, okay, Ableton 11 gets released and then you don't hear from them in 2 years until the new update comes out. Well, to be honest, they did do a lot of work. Okay, this is the feature list for Ableton 11 itself. That shouldn't count. All of this bit, ignore this. Yeah, from here, all of these bug fixes are things that they did work on. So you cannot say to them, to the Ableton development team, it wouldn't be fair to say that they do fuck all. I know the last few updates were terrible. Nobody likes Ableton Cloud. Nobody likes this new mobile app. But still. Fixing broken stuff from previous updates. That's always better than trying to add devices that you need to pay for. While you have an upgrade plan. I mean, that's the point of, that's the good thing about Ableton. We don't have to pay an upgrade plan because there's no upgrades. It's easy. It's free money. Free money saved. Don't need an upgrade plan if you don't get any upgrades. I wish I could afford to have Ableton as well. It's the fastest software out there. I will say, looking at this, it's very similar to Ableton. There's a few things that make it quicker. There's maybe a few things that make it slower. ImageLine is the best DAW company. Yes, yes. I don't think that that would be an unpopular opinion. Looking at what FL puts out on, I think their update cycle is like every 6 months they have a big update, right? A few new devices and a few new core DAW features, like the one that they had right now, where they add the reverb, they add that multi-delay plugin, which looks really, really cool. They add the new browser features, theming, all of that stuff. It was all, a lot of the things that people asked for, the browser thing, the themes, all of that was implemented because people implemented it, or people were requesting it. So that's true. And second, it's all for free. Because eventually we'll all be screwed somehow. Yeah, at some point, the point also is that now the hype is Bitwig. 3 years, it's going to be a new DAW, maybe even a new technique. Maybe in 3-4 years we will not be sitting behind a big screen looking at the desktop. Maybe it will be the next big thing in music production will be an iPad. Maybe that's a thing. I just noticed that my timeline had been playing for quite a while here. Let's see if we can find the play ad. You cannot even see the play ad, it's so far out. Yeah, no, the techniques are constantly changing and you're always behind on the cycle. You're always behind on the plugin cycle. Like, for me, I've never gotten into Soothe. Everybody is hyped about Soothe. Everybody loves it. But for me, it's the same deal as with Bitwig. I don't see why I would need to spend $200 on Soothe. Or $119, what is the price? I don't know. In 10 years, when Isotope Native Instruments company has bought 90% of all developers, we will be screwed. Yeah, I know. Soothe is nothing special. Well, it is something new. It is something that wasn't... Yeah, I mean, the technique was there. There's a few plugins that came around at the same time. When I say Soothe, that's just like the biggest plugin of a whole bunch of list of plugins that do this. I'm certain that... what's it called? Dynamics... There's a Dynamics plugin in here that also does the same thing. Spectral Dynamics, I think. Spectral Dynamics. You could probably get Spectral Dynamics to do the same thing. I've seen people use this plugin to do the same thing as what Soothe does, right? Take the highest resonances and peak those down. Soothe is cool when you make resonate stuff. Yeah. authentics or tidal cycles. Sooth is fantastic, but I wouldn't say it's quite worth the money. By the way, if you miss Max for Life, there's no plug data which runs as a VST. Well, all of the Max for Life stuff that I'm using is modulating parameters internally inside of Ableton. So I don't use any of the Max for Life instruments and those kind of things. The only thing that I have is the mod pack and then a few very simple kind of devices in here. I think this is like one of those statistic things that I used to use to look at session times, which didn't work because I had it loaded on my default template and it would count every time I would open up a default template and add all of those sessions together. So at the end of the day, it would just record all of the time I'd spend in Ableton at all times for every project and not just like project time. Then there's this one, which is an interesting Max for Life device. This allows you to auto gain. You set one to sender and one to receiver. I think it's the other way around. And anything you put in between will be automatically gain compensated. But other than that, I basically use it for internal modulation within the track and stuff like that. I think there's an assumption that it knows what it's doing. It just blindly reduces peaks. Yeah. So how many hours would you spend per project on average? It's interesting that you asked that. I was asked this question a little while ago. Not last Friday, but the Friday before that, I did a 2-hour live coaching session for a group of sidetrans producers called Biopsy by Mark. Maybe some of you know Mark. I'm pretty sure that Dash knows who Mark is. He runs a Discord server called Biopsy, and they organize these kind of sessions. Everybody pays $5 for the entry, and then he helps maintain the server, and it's like a little bit more professional than your average Discord server. Anyway, I got asked that question there, and I'll give the same answer in that it very much depends on projects. I can show you a little example of that. If I go, now that my video has stopped rendering, I can finally go in here, and I think this is it. This is the project that I've spent the most time on. I would say that this is a project that I've spent maybe even over 200 hours on. I was gonna say 150, but maybe even over 200. You'll see this is like a 300 track project. It's massive. Then there's other tracks that I spent maybe 30 hours on for like start to finish, especially in the early days. I know Mark very well. He's a patron of mine. Yeah, that's why I would say that. He used to be very involved with my server before he made his own server. He was kind of like the moderator for my server for a while, and he was the guy that convinced me to start doing private lessons. I did my first private lessons with him, and I would obviously give him the lesson of what I know, and he would learn from me, and then he would help me be a better teacher in that sense. So he has always been very helpful in the sidetrans community in these kind of collaborative things and getting stuff organized for people. He's helped me many times also with the development of this thing that I showed you before. He helped me with understanding how to actually adapt the XML file for the Ableton project. This project is going to take a while. He does a lot behind the scenes. Yes. He helped with the SciShop guy. He did like a website for him, I think. Let's see how many tracks this is. And this, by the way, still has a lot of the tracks consolidated. This project is now 290 tracks. If I unconsolidate all of the projects, or what I did for this project was take a whole bunch of groups and then render them to individual audio tracks, because otherwise it just could not run. So all of these vocals, as you're seeing right now, are just 2 copies of the same track. This is a rendered version of a group of vocals that, if I wanted to really dive into the individual sounds, would add another 10, 20 tracks to the whole thing. And at some point, what I'm going to do with this project, I haven't finished producing it yet, but I'm going to expand all of those groups out again, so that I have a very big project to maybe mix. And then I would think it would be interesting content to mix a project with this many tracks. How would you go about doing something like that? Also, I think the Reaper project would look very, very cool, so that's why I would want to do that. But to answer your questions, on average, I would say with the new mixing style that I'm doing now of exporting and importing into Reaper, 70, 80 hours? Something like that. Obviously this project is an outlier because it's very big. But I have more outlier projects. I have another project that I'm not going to show you on stream yet because I don't want to spoil that particular project. But that's a project where I just finished kind of the first drop breakdown and then going into the second drop. So I would say just under halfway done with the production phase of the project. And I'm pretty sure that I've spent over 60, 70 hours on the project. So again, that will be an outlier that will go up to 150, maybe 200 hours when I'm actually finished with the mixdown, the mastering and everything. Because now I literally do production, then rendering everything out to audio, which takes a whole night, right? I leave that stuff on overnight and just have Ableton render out each individual track as an audio file. And then I import it, have to reorganize the project, then do all of the mixing, then export it, and then go back into Ableton to do the final mastering. All of that takes a lot of time. And I like to do that because then I think I've talked about this before on stream, the kind of control that you have over mixing. I wouldn't be able to open up all of the plugins that I want to use, especially in a project like this. This would just crash my PC, even the new one. But it came from the old PC, where obviously I had even less resources. So I was even less capable of doing like big mixing changes, inserting a lot of the plugins that I want to use in the mix within the production project itself. It would just not run. So that's kind of where it came from, and now I'm keeping it in my workflow because I just like to separate out the mindset between production and mixing. How long have I been streaming? I've been live for 2 hours. Wow. I want to take a break then, which means I need to put on some music, which, just for the fun of it, I want to do in here. Is there a way to quickly add sound location content? Exactly, that's what I want. Let's put in my music export folder. I'll put on the project that I just showed. This big project here. I'll put that on as an audio file. I'm not going to play it in here because I'm sure, looking at the percentage meter already, this is going to be crashing my PC if I do that. Please stop playing. Okay, I'll play it in here. Okay. If I loop it, it doesn't zoom out to the correct thing. But that's okay. Now here's a question. Does it have playhead following like Ableton does? So about 2 hours every day, that's more than a month, sounds about right. Yeah, usually my sessions are like 4 or 5 hours. So I don't do daily work on individual projects. Usually my kind of workflow happens to be, okay, I get an idea for a project, lots of work. I might spend 7, 8, 9 hours even on a project the first 2 days, and then it crumbles, right? The creativity for that particular project falls down, and then I'll leave it for I don't know, maybe 1 week, sometimes a month, sometimes 2 months, and then it spikes up again and I do another 2 sessions of minimum 4, maximum 8, 9 hours, depending on how in the mood I am. Like if I'm streaming, if I'm doing production on stream, I'm explaining all of the things and I'm talking with the chat, and not that that's annoying, but it does take away a lot of the energy. So it might not be a good way to kind of show how long my sessions last, but my normal production session lasts a lot longer than I would do it on, for example, on stream. I stream maybe 4 hours maximum. A production session can easily double for me. If I'm really in the mood, in the creative mood, I'll also forget things at that point. Like I'll forget to do like laundry, and then sometimes I'll have a late lunch because I'm like, oh wait, it's 3 o'clock. I should have been eating 2 hours ago. But just at the start of a project, I want to get really the idea on paper so that I know if I lose the creativity for this project, I can go back into it in a few months and regain it. Right? That's the idea behind that. I wanted to see if there's a way to make it follow the playhead like it does in Ableton. I'm going to close out of this project because I know that this is going to cause me issues. I don't think there's a playhead following. Or maybe it's in here. Overdub automation, right? No. This is all very complex. Window bottom right. The last icon. Arrange your window. Arrange your window. Follow playback. Yes, there we are. I like the style of multi-soloing as well. This is what Reaper does. I like this. Okay, I'm going to take... It's not the same as Ableton. It just moves the window itself, not hold the playback in the middle. But that's okay. I guess I could just zoom out. That would also work. Either way, I'm going to take a quick break and then I'll do another hour of just experimenting, playing around. I do want to get into the complex things of Bitwig, the grid and all of that. Maybe I'll do another 2 hours, I don't know, depending on how I feel. But I do want to get into that, because that's really what its major selling point is. So take a quick break, let this play out, and then we'll be right back into Bitwig. leave the second drop as a little bit of a surprise for you guys. So when the track actually comes out, you have to say, I've played this on my stream before, so you guys know the track. I want to just get back into Bitwig. While I was taking the break, I thought of a way that I could integrate Bitwig into my workflow, right? How would I be able to use maybe Bitwig in some kind of capacity? And the only way that it would be valuable for me to do that would be to say that for now, for me, it's not looking like it's worth the price that it's asking, which is standard $400 for the whole thing, right? The whole Bitwig, massive, major upgrades, everything. The studio version, what I'm running right now in demo mode. What I thought about though, is that I don't need to buy it. It's 300 now because it's on sale, right? Normally it's 400, $399. I think that's the price that I saw. Yeah, okay. What I thought about is I could, and this is a little bit of a hack, say that I find some interesting instrument in here or some interesting process that I might want to use, like for example this split. This split is very interesting. I could run it in demo mode, and since you cannot export or save anything, there's technically no way to get audio from Bitwig unless I use voice meter. Voice meter allows me to take one of these outputs. You can see my microphone is coming in right here and going to this output, and this is going to go to my microphone in OBS, which is going to my stream. This is the microphone. I can mute myself here, and now you guys cannot hear me. I hope. I could just set up a virtual port, this other virtual port, and just have Bitwig go there and just use the demo mode. I make IRs when I don't want to pay for reverbs. Yes, exactly. It's the same thing. Yeah. There was another thing, which back in the day when I still had FL Studio installed, you could actually load FL Studio, like the whole DAW, as a VST plugin, which was amazing, because what it would do is it would sync up the playheads. So you could have half of your project in Ableton, say that you make all of your drums in Ableton, and then you just load one instrument track, which is going to be FL Studio, and it would just synchronize the playheads. So you would press play at, I don't know, 129, and FL Studio would jump to 129 and it would start playing from there. So you could have an FL project that was just part of your Ableton project, which I even believe that if you were to open up the Ableton project, it would also load the accompanying like FL project with it. Like, it was very, very streamlined. It was something called Rewire, I think, was part of it. It was either you use the Rewire system or you use the system that was like the VST. I think it was called VSTi or something like that. One thing you have to try is that is completely unique to Bitwig is the exponential node splitting. Okay, so the few things that I want to try in this last bit of the stream here. My camera is off. It's because I hit space. It turns off my camera in OBS for some reason. I wanted to stop playback here and that actually went to OBS. Either way, what I want to try is one, the included instruments. Look at some of the different synths that are available, because that's really an area where Ableton is lacking. I think Ableton's effects are solid, right? And looking at what this delay does, apart from the whole modulation system, which in my particular version of Ableton is also included if I wanted to. But the effects, I mean, they're pretty much the same. Like, this is basically just a delay version. You have a little bit more options in that there's like 4 versions of the delay. But where Bitwig can really overstep, for me personally, is the included instruments. So I want to look into instrument Bitwig for this and see what we have in here. So we have some kind of FM synth. I'm assuming this is the same as operator. This looks like operator, except that you can set up your own FM matrix. And there seems to be N. I don't know what N is. Is that noise? Noise enable. Okay, so there's a noise oscillator included in here. This then goes to some kind of filter, I assume. Right? You have your like global settings here. Node effects. Is this MIDI effects that you can put in per instrument? And then these are the effects that you can put in afterwards. This already comes with a preset loaded, doesn't it? Like, if I play something now. Yeah. Polymer. Let's try Polymer then. Okay, so this looks like a subtractive synth then. Okay, so it has wavetable, unison oscillator, phase distortion oscillator. Okay. But just one oscillator? I'm assuming for anything complicated that you want to do, you're pretty much going to have to use the grid. Like if I want to set up 4 different oscillators, would that not be like a standard device? Then if I were to like, I don't know, maybe 4 different of these oscillator types here. Swarm. Instrument. Swarm. It's an oscillator type in Polymer. Yeah, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant was, say that I want to use something like this device, right? And I want to have both the swarm and the unison running together into this filter, say, as an example. Or use phase 4 for multi-voice stuff. Oh, Bitwig, any category, phase 4. Okay, so this is a... it looks like an FM synth to me as well. Isn't it? Shape modulator. No, this isn't FM. Not like operator is, where one oscillator modulates the other. I think this has like included modulations within it. Yeah, that was my question. At some point, if you want to get more complex with these kind of instruments, you would need to convert it to the grid. Convert to polygrid. Which is where things get interesting. Now I could technically just throw in a different oscillator. Right, if I want this other union oscillator up top here, I'm assuming that it needs some kind of input. If I hold Control, does that duplicate it? Yes. I'm just matching these inputs here. Where does this cable come from? This one comes from there to there. And then this one goes from here to here. Okay. Question. Why is this... Ah, okay. So there's different color coding, which is cool. I could say that all of my oscillators would be white, I think. And then maybe this one will make that red. Yeah, so you could color code the different things that you use. Oh, this one just accepts 1. Okay. Let's... Wait, if you move a thing, it removes all of its connections? The color also shows in oscilloscope. Ah, okay. So now I could maybe make a mix for these two together that then go into this OSC submix, which means I would need a mix blend. This is what I need. Okay, so you go in here, you go there, and you go there. Let's try that like oscilloscope thing. See if we can display. I'm assuming it works for Spectra as well. Maybe Spectra doesn't have multiple inputs. But say I want to send this here and the noise generator here, then they would show up together, right? You can drop it on the output input to quickly auto wire. Okay, let's try that. That seems like something that could save time. If I were to drop it there, yeah. So anytime you drop it on a single output, it will basically put them together. Right, it will automatically connect them. This is very familiar with me because I used Patcher, where Patcher is one level above that, in the sense that you do Patcher with effects and plugins. This is really like the building blocks, right? We have a multiplier here, we have individual like blends and stuff like that. That's also available in Patcher, but you're also just able to load in, I don't know, a whole serum into Patcher. What do you think about KRK RP5 Rocket Classic? The KRK RP5 Rocket Classic, I've heard people who use them who are, to be honest, what I've heard from the people who use them is, the two people that I know who use them are both beginner musicians, so their mixes aren't going to be the best, but I've seen that they get pretty high, like value, like pretty decent sounding mixes, much earlier than I was able to get myself, and that's partially because I've moved a lot between like different times. So if you're in a room and you get the speakers and you familiarize with how the speakers sound in the room, it's always going to be easier to get a nice mix down. The other thing was, my speakers are like much lower in quality than the Row kits. They're not even monitors, right? They're like actual like Logitech small speakers, and it's the only thing that I can get in between my monitors. So it's not like I can do like a big upgrade here, otherwise the monitor with OBS would fall off the desk. I just don't have the space. I don't know if that's because what I've heard from them is because of those speakers, if they're just like very good, very consistent speakers, or if that's something that anybody with any form of pro speakers would do. I think maybe there's people in chat who have it and who can talk about it better than I can. I've never heard something negative about it. Okay, I want to see... Oh, this is the spectrum. If I play now... Okay, so that's the spectrum showing up. Let's see the white noise then. Yeah, that shows different colors. That's cool. This very much reminds me... This is basically Reactor, isn't it? Like the way it works with the whole building blocks and stuff like that. I mean, all of the modular environments are pretty much the same. The whole VCV rack, you could say that this is basically VCV rack without the modular graphics, I'd say. I mean, it's pretty much the same with the types of building blocks that you get. And also it's native. Yeah, the big thing about this environment is that it's going to integrate much more with your DAW than any other kind of plugin version or whatever other system that you've set up. With VCV Rec 2, though, it's become it's become a lot better. Like the way that VCV Rec 2 integrates with your DAW just as a VST plugin. Before, it was very sketchy, the VST bridge that you had to use. You could not automate anything, stuff like that. You can also polystack any parameter in grid. Polystack. Now you need to explain a little bit what that means. I'm assuming that has to do something with like multiple nodes work. Also, this is just a polysynth, by the way. Maybe that's because of the things that we've used, I don't know. Doesn't seem like there's anything that would make this mono. Right-click the grid device. In the inspector, I'm assuming that this is the inspector here. Right? Because this was where the volume thing was before. Right-click on the grid device. Okay. Set voice stacking. Where to be voice stacking? Bottom row. Here. Voice stacking, yes. Oh, I can add multiple voices? Or will it just automatically like create multiple voices for every note that I play? It does seem like that because it gives me 2, right? I also hear some phasing. Now, set voice, add a voice stack modulator. Voice stack modulator. Can I just... Or will it just search within the thing that I have? In rig again. Ah, here. Voice stack modulator. Okay. And then I set that to panning, I think. That parameter will be split into 2 voices and modulated separately per voice. Best when added to pan as well. Okay, let's add this to panning then. If I like make it like this and then set the panning to left, I assume one will stay low and the other will go high. Okay, so now both of my voices are from in the left. No, it's bipolar. Aha. Okay, so now we would need to make some changes here. We'll just open this one up maybe. Yeah, so that's going to turn it down on the other end, so that's not what we exactly want. We want it to go around this. Okay. Yeah, I could see that work with maybe like an LFO. In fact, the best way to test this would be to set some kind of offset on an LFO. Instead of just modulating this, we go like that. I want give me a second. You to go to frequency? Or do I need to, wait, I need to do an LFO in here because we're modulating this. Which means that if I want for each of the voices the LFO to sound different, maybe set like an offset. Is that, okay, we want this polyphonic. Or maybe just different modulation speeds. Could be a good way to see. Would that not work? Would that not set different modulators or different top right of mod modules have a send? Do it maybe needs to be in here, right? Yeah, if I set it up with this one and then remove this one, and then I can set, this looks like a phase offset to me. Let's set a 90 degrees each way so that it's a 180 degree offset. Yeah. Let's set a bit more so we can hear the difference. Okay, so it's not doing 90 degrees. Do we need to set this to 180 for that? Okay, so that's not working. Let's quickly make our lives easier by going. Okay, so then it's clicking. If I set it to 90. I basically wanted to ping pong. Yeah, of course we're exploring it right now, but I can see the potential here in this being a very cool way to add a lot of differences between all of the like different notes that you're playing together. I'm just playing one note and it's essentially creating two notes for me. Two voices, right? Which each have their own modulation. It's a little bit hard to see how it would work, like internally. What is it actually doing to each of the voices? There seems to be different modes here. Is this just... I cannot edit that. Manual to edit. Okay. What is this? Oh, this is per individual voice then? Or is this controls all of the different modulations that are done by this specific modulator then? Right? Yeah, controls the entire modulation. So now that I've set up this to both the offset and the panning, there's no way to individually control either the panning or the offset. If I wanted to do that, I would need to just add another voice stack, right? I assume. Second, how does it work? Now we have two voices. How does this work if I add... Hello? Here. If I add more voices, like where do the... Ah! Aha! Wait. I don't know what value does. But I can see manual. Yeah, you would just use manual to manually set it for each of the different voices that you want to play. What is value? I'm assuming that value needs some kind of input, and then it just multiplies the value for each of the nodes. Yeah, where does this get its input value from then? Or does it just take whatever value is in the modulation and multiply that? Like if I set this to, say, 10% as an example, we'll just go for the second voice 10%, for the third voice 20%. Something like that. You weren't going to do anything complex and now you are already doing stuff that 90% of Bitwig users would never do, not complaining, but just shows how a different piece of software can inspire. Well, not so much as inspire. I was looking specifically for the things that I wasn't able to do in Ableton itself. And something simple like, sorry here, but how do I get out of this? Leave please, here. Like just arranging a track in Bitwig, I can do this in Ableton and I'm probably faster. So for me to get interested in Bitwig, I would need to do the stuff that I can only do in Bitwig, which is this grid stuff. This is the main, I would say from what I've heard about Bitwig, this is its main selling point, plus improved stability and the plugin delay compensation, the plugin sandboxing, which, I mean, I've not had any issues with the plugins in here, so I assume that that's just working. The point is to find something that makes me want to actually switch over to the software. Right now I would say that I have not found something that makes me say, oh, I'm going to switch to Bitwig completely. But I will say that while I might be doing the thing with the demo mode running and all of that stuff like that, I might at some point get to a point where I'm just like, well, what if I just give up Ableton and go into Bitwig? But that will probably take me a lot more time. I might once in a while integrate it to create one or two sounds in its modular environment, but I don't know if I'm going to fork over the 400 euros plus the upgrade plan to actually own this piece of software full time. Because that I would be able to do with the demo. Right, there's no need for me to actually buy the software for that. Even though it's a little bit of a hack and maybe not the best way supports the developers, I also don't see, like, the other choice would be for me to just buy Bitwig, and I don't see the value of me spending that kind of money on Bitwig right now. But obviously that can change in the future. There's no need for that to be right there now here. I've been using this software for 3 hours now. So it's kind of natural that it isn't there yet. You are supporting them by just doing the stream. Well, yeah, I am. Kind of. Technically, you could say that. But at the end of the day, it wasn't meant to be designed this way. It wasn't meant to be... They specifically made it so that you cannot save ideas and not export ideas. You cannot export audio for a reason. And to go around that, I would not be surprised if it's in the terms of service that you cannot actually do this. Because it is really what you're doing is you're subverting one of the limitations of the demo, which is that it cannot actually save any of your audio ideas for any other projects to use. Isn't VCV Rack better than the grid, or is it just different? What I think the grid is best for is this kind of very small editing here, because I can see everything that's going on in this little window. If you were to make this setup with all of the same kind of combinations in VCV-Rack, you would not be able to comfortably navigate through it without having to move around, right? Without having to go and look from here to the other thing, because all of the modules are, you know, they have that kind of classic rack size. So that would be the difference, I think, just looking at it like this. Also, there might be some cool things that you can do with the particular logic things. I mean, this should all be in VCV-Rack. I think even everything, right? Like pitch quantization, that's in VCV-Rack. All of the math stuff is going to be in there. All of the logic stuff. The individual delays and all of that stuff, VCV-Rack has done this 100 times over. So where VCV-Rack really shines is the amount of modules that you have. It's even, I think, yeah, you could go deeper. I mean, all of these options, you could use, as Dash said, you could see this as technically designing a single module, because you could really stack individual oscillators and turn that into one bigger oscillator that would be comparable to like the oscillators in VCV-Rack. But that you could also do that in VCV-Rack technically. So I wouldn't say that it's 100% that way. And also here, there's also just like whole phasor effects and whole flanger effects and stuff like that. So it's definitely multiple levels. It's not that it's just like one level below. Because if you had to make everything, if you even had to make like your own oscillators and stuff like that. Yeah, for example, there's no reverb in grid, but there's several ways to make your own. Yes. Yeah, that's true. You use a lot of delays, put them all together, set up all of the parameters to modulate them perfectly. So in that regard, yeah, there is a little bit of a lower level in there. But then again, I mean, VCV-Rack as well, you could also just make a reverb in VCV-Rack out of all of the delays that are in VCV-Rack, right? So I would say that both the grid and VCV-Rack have kind of a number of levels that they sit in, and maybe you could argue that VCV-Rack goes a little bit higher in their level. I like the tip from Dash Glitch, which with stepper for oscillator. Stepper for oscillator. Now I'm intrigued. Steps. It's probably going to be a tutorial, right? I'm assuming that you meant the tutorial, or is there a message that I missed here? I think that might be one of Dash's tutorials, so if I really wanted to dive into that, then I would need to. That was the video that sparked the convo. Aha. That's the whole start of this debacle. I'll have to watch that then. It's definitely, what I'll say about Bitwig, if I had to draw a conclusion, it's definitely something that I'm going to implement in my workflow, but I'm not going to switch over. This is definitely something that might be interesting, maybe even for 1 or 2 videos, but I'll probably not switch over to Bitwig for a long time, until I'm fully comfortable with the way that I can work in it, and given the way that I imagine me using it, just for using the grid, like I would create a project because I cannot save this, right? I can, right now in demo mode, all of the progress that we've made in this track, which, I mean, we just made for experimentation. I wasn't planning on creating a track out of this, but I cannot really save this. So if I wanted to do anything with Bitwig, as long as I'm not buying it, I would need to do it instantly and then maybe create a video out of that, maybe create a sound out of that, wherever I want to use it for. So I could definitely see it being in my workflow in the sense that I could use it as something that I can record out of. But that's for very specific circumstances. Maybe if I want to experiment with low-level modular stuff, then this could be probably the best way to do it. I think this is more intuitive than VCVRAC. I would say that I think the limitation in here is probably nice to have, in the sense that one of the overwhelming things about VCVRAC and why I've never started with really like gone deep into VCVRAC is because you just don't know where to start. I can probably ask Dash for a bunch of modules that are good, and I can ask another few people who are like in the modular know-how, who maybe have their own like physical modular hardware synthesizer, people that really know what's going on, about a bunch of different modules that are probably going to work well together, and then I'll get 100 different answers and I'll end up with a list of 200 modules that I need to learn, right? In this, everything is in here, and some of these things you're not going to use. So all of this stuff you can basically boil down into something that you can learn, I think, decently well within a few weeks if you really put yourself into. I don't see that being the case for VCVRAC. I think VCVRAC is an endless rabbit hole, and not just a deep rabbit hole like this. So if you're looking to get into modular, then the grid is definitely a good way to start, I would say. A more digestible way. But then again, I would say the same thing for the mod pack. The mod pack that I showed off for Ableton before. I actually want to shout out Dark Integer. Some of you maybe have heard of Dark Integer, but that's the guy that made the mod pack that I showed off earlier. And I've shown it in a few videos too, but that's also the kind of system that I would recommend somebody gets into modular with. Because if we look at the mod pack, it's just a bunch of things. You can learn this in a few days, right? Maximum. Maybe a few hours of experimentation like we did now. If I was sitting down here and I already had the kind of Bitwig basic knowledge to open up the grid, and I would just spend this 3 hours of streaming just learning the grid, I think I could get pretty far in setting up a basic synth, setting up a basic routing system like this is. I think that's doable. It doesn't look very, very complicated. I used VCV a lot in Cubase, but did a lot of bouncing and keeping notes for patches. This is just native in the project, works with all Bitwig stuff so good. Yeah. Obviously the big advantage if you have the Bitwig environment is that this is local to the environment, which means that this can never go wrong. I would say VCVRAC 2, as I said, solved a lot of those issues, but it's probably not going to be as smooth of an integration as this, right? I'm assuming that you can, add automation lane. You could probably automate any of these parameters, I'm thinking, because that's really the big advantage of doing something like this, right? You can, anything that I've clicked on so far seems to be automatable in some capacity. Maybe even, the octave selection, stuff like that. All of that seems to just work within. And that's really where a system like this, an integrated system like this, can outshine something like VCVRAC. VCVRAC can't really do that. In the same way that Faceplant could not really do that up until version 2. Because as well in Faceplant is also a modular system. If we look at, opening up Faceplant, you need to set up your synth yourself. Faceplant doesn't do anything when you open it up. It's an empty thing. It's an empty synth. Sharing Bitwig patches is really cool because you don't need extra stuff. Also true, yes. Although they may have, to be honest, I've never tried, but I think there's something for VCVRAC 2 now that saves patches, and then it saves the modules that are required for the patches, and then it allows you to get the modules when you open up a patch. I think there's something like that. I'm scared to open VCVRAC, by the way, because the last time it crashed my Ableton. But then again, here we can test out the, what's it called, the sandbox stuff. Let's open it up as an instrument. VCV Rec 2. Welcome to VCV Rec. Yeah, you can save these as patches. I'm not 100% sure, because in the first VCV Rec you could save a patch and it would just not open. It would just give you a list of modules that you didn't have, and then you would have to manually go into your library and add all of them back into your library. I don't know if they fixed that for VCV Rec 2, but if that's not the case, then obviously the grid is better in the way that you're just able to use whatever components are in here. I don't even know. Is there a way to add components to this? Is there a way to like add additional stuff to it? Or is it just, it works in terms of sharing the patches because everybody already has all of the stuff that's in there? While we're here, I should probably update all of my library. Is this all that I have in my library? No, right? I might have 2 accounts for VCV Rec. I remember my library being more extensive. Oh, there's a loading wheel. That's usually not a good sign. Is Bitwig still working? Sandboxing, please. No? Is it not going to do it? Bitwig Studio plugin host is not responding. Okay, so if this is not responding... It works. It works. It just crashes the plugin. It just crashes the plugin. That's nice. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. Worked perfectly as we tested. Yes, it just crashes the plugin. You close out of the. I closed out of the thing, and then now the project is still working, still here. Wouldn't matter because I couldn't save it anyway. So if it crashed, it's still the same. But the capability being there is nice. And again, I will say there's definitely things that Ableton should implement from Bitwig to keep up with the competition. One of those things being the way that it handles plugin and sandboxing. I assume that that's going to be a bit of a hassle to program into this or into Ableton because of the way that VST is like integrated. It's a very connected system, VST. Like you have to set up multiple systems within the audio host to even host VST, so there's a lot of code involved just to getting VST loading. That being said, I do think Ableton should just implement that. The plugin delay compensation, what I noticed, and I'm going to be pedantic here, remember when I had this set to always in? So this is now monitor on, and I want to play this synth or a different synth as well. Let's see. Oh, it crashed everything. Okay. That means that I need to probably delete VST Rec and then reload all plugins. Now here's a question. Will it save? So it does save parameters. It even saves changes because I remember setting reverb and delay to 0. So that's good. Am I running? Is there a way to say that this is VST3 or 2? Can I check that? Because in VST3 that's a native feature of VST3. That's one of the upgrades from VST2 to VST3 is that it keeps settings on crashes and reloads even if they're not explicitly saved in the project. Can I see if this is the VST3 or 2 version? Because if it's VST2, then it's impressive. This is VST3. Is that the 3 stripes versus like 2 stripe thing that shows it? I'm assuming that's where you see it, right? Icon on yellow is VST3. Okay, so what is... Oh yeah, so the 3 stripes probably means that it's like a VST3 thing. Okay. Then I was getting a little bit too excited, but that makes sense, that it then just keeps the settings. This is also VST3, so this also has kept its settings. What about my serum? Or does it just default to always load the VST3 version here? It might be the case that it just... Aha. No. This is VST2, right? This is a different logo. And it still holds the settings. That's cool. Like, that's actually impressive. Does that mean that, yeah, here, this is the 9. Remember when we had to edit like pattern 9 for the sidechain to work? It's still kept. Or maybe this was in a different sandbox because it's maybe in like one of these here. I clicked reload all plugins before I checked if this even crashed. But if this one crashed and it still remembered the settings, that means that there's like an actual external process that keeps remembering the settings for each plugin for when it like crashes and stuff like that. So that's very cool. That's another plus that I think Ableton should include. So I'll probably give a final conclusion because I wasn't planning on streaming a lot longer. I had a lot of fun. I think it surprised me in a few ways, in the sense that for how people were talking about it, I thought it would be a bit more of a, how should I say this, a bit more of a well-rounded software, because of the little issues that I seem to be having with little things like this LFO tool thing, where it kept changing to version 9 for some reason because of the note that I played, or like shape 9 or 10 because of the different notes that I played, and you have to like put a note filter in the middle for that to not start working. I think the undo system keeps the data. Yeah, so Ableton doesn't do that. Ableton's undo system, because when you recover from a crash in Ableton projects, it uses the undo system. It does not keep that in memory, the specific settings for all of the parameters of a plugin. And that is purely to prevent you, when you are in the project itself and you hit Ctrl-Z and it suddenly starts editing plugin parameters. So yeah, there's a little bit of a different approach there. I think personally on crashes, one of the big annoyances is having to reset all of the plugins that you set between the last time you saved and the last time and the time it crashed. That is another annoyance. Another big annoyance. This is maybe something to test. Ooh, this is a good test. How does it handle Melda's plugin delay? Because Melda, being Melda, have devised their own way to calculate plugin delays. And there's actually 2 ways that a host can handle delay. What they can essentially do is have just a flat calculation where they just look at, okay, I'm going to send the sound through. How long does it take for that sound to come out again? That's the basic way. If you turn off latency reporting in the Melda plugins, that is what it will use. Just the basic way. What Melda does is it allows for latency reporting, and it uses an internal system to calculate the amount of delay that the plugin uses. And this is Melda does this because it allows it to be a little bit more precise in edge cases sometimes, especially when you get into complex plugins like Freeform Phase is a fairly complex process. What it uses, any linear filter will obviously introduce a lot of delay. So in those cases, the delays can vary wildly. In Ableton, there's a problem where if you save it when there's not a good way to have a default option for the Melda plugins, because if you have it, I have a default to latency reporting on. All of these default settings are per plugin, so this is how my plugin always opens, regardless of the DAW that I'm using. Very nice of Melda to do that. They allow you to just do that for any place that you open the plugin up. It will always have the same default settings. Very nice. So my default settings is latency reporting on. What that means is that for me, or what that means is that in Ableton will for some reason use both, and therefore it will offset any channel which has a Melda plugin on it more than it should. Now if you go ahead and turn it off, it also doesn't work. It makes a different timing, and for some reason it also doesn't line up. So what I need to do in all of my projects, every time I open up, say that this is my Ableton project and I want to play it, I have to open up every Melda plugin that has a delay on it, turn it off and turn it on. Obviously I cannot test this in here because I cannot save projects. So actually, come to think of it, how would I test this? I was planning on doing some kind of test here. At the end, it all has to be time for the audio thread to work without problems. Yeah, but there are several ways of implementing a plugin delay compensation. By the way, good, nice to see you here, Z-Forms. You always have some very intelligent takes on this kind of stuff. Deeper projector. Oh, that I'm not able to read that. I'm sorry, Jabba. I know a little bit of German, but that's too German for me. I'm sorry. Auch den Kanal. I'm sorry. I tried to decipher it. I think it says something about you liking my channel, which if that's what it says, then I highly appreciate that. I can't read enough German to say, but it's probably something very positive. Yeah, that's kind of what I saw. Yeah, the latency in Melda plugins is a way to allow. That's what I was explaining. The way that Ableton delay compensation works is that for Ableton delays compensation to work properly, you need to go into your Melda plugins every time they open up. So every time you load a project and just go turn it off, wait a little bit, and then turn it on again. Which is annoying, and that means that I cannot use some features of the Melda plugins to its full extent, because it just makes it more annoying having to open up more plugins that you use. But then again, this really only is a problem with processes like Freeform Phase, which I use for basslines only, and I render them to audio, so that's no issue. The only thing where it becomes a problem in my production projects is when I do filtering on the kick and bass, right, for transitions. If I high pass my kick and bass or low pass my kick and bass or something like that, then I have to use a linear phase filter because I want to maintain phase relationship between kick and bass. So I don't want the waveform to like start changing at that point. So really, usually it means that I need to open up 2 or 3 plugins. It's not that big of a deal. It's a little bit of an annoyance. This only became like an issue when they started to offer you to allow to turn off latency reporting. I think what happens is that it opens up and Ableton just assumes that latency reporting is off, because the way that it like changes the timing is that it actually moves it forward in timing, which suggests to me that it's doing more delay compensation than it needs to do. And I've spoken to the Melda developers about this. They are aware of this problem, and they say that it's a specific problem with Ableton's phase or Ableton's delay compensation. Ableton is rare in the sense that its delay compensation is one of the fastest in the business, if not the fastest, because of the way that it is structured, in that it calculates all of the delays and then it just compensates. Whereas something like Reaper will go for individual plugins, will go calculate, compensate, and then the next plugin, calculate, compensate. So you never have the issue. In Ableton you have a very if you use like a very long latency plugin and then you add an LFO tool, you may have noticed that your LFO tool is like offset, right? Then you get that issue. You don't get that issue in Reaper, because Reaper will just, and most DAWs do this, it's per plugin. Yeah, Bitwig is per plugin. So it will go here, it will see this M freeform phase, which introduces 170 milliseconds. And then already here, before it goes into the saturator, it will compensate 170 milliseconds. Which is the standard way of doing it, and I think is the better way of doing it. Oh yeah, the Reaper is, when it comes to technical ability, I think Reaper might outshine even Bitwig in just being able to oversample anything, like internally. I don't think that's something that I've heard Bitwig being able to do. Right, if I wanted to oversample this plugin, I can, let's be honest, I can just go into Melda oversampling and just go 1024 times and crash everything. But obviously this is insane amounts of oversampling. But if a plugin does not offer oversampling, in Reaper you can just oversample the plugin or the plugin chain. What it will do is it will the way that it works is it essentially creates a new, like, or almost like a new project, and then it runs that project at a higher sample rate than it does the rest of your project, and that part of that new project kind of becomes that individual chain. So you can think of it as that chain just going into a higher project, higher sample rate project. Bitwig is really well built in my opinion, from what I tested. Yeah, when it comes to like software design, this is definitely up there. There's a few annoyances that I have. One of the things I would like is this channel to be smaller. Like just being able to completely hide the wave here. I cannot imagine what a project like the one that I showed before, which is almost 300 tracks, would look like in Bitwig, if this is the smallest level that you can set tracks to without closing up groups like this. Button on arranger window. Use large tracker. Aha! Now this is more like it. And then I assume I can open it up again? No? Okay. So every time I would want to make like an edit to the volume, any meaningful edits, because obviously in here you cannot really do that, I would need to open it up like this then. Dash always beats you to it, yeah. Because see, in Ableton, I have the option to just do it for individual tracks, which I like, which I really like. This is the way that I keep track of my the things that I'm working on. No DAW has a perfect design, exactly. And obviously, right now my workflow really depends on the program that I'm using, Ableton, because, you know, I've been using it for 6 years. So it influences the way that I've been, even the things that you don't think about are part of your workflow. Like, as I said, the way that I select the tracks that I'm actively working on, the sounds that I'm actively working on, is through this system of opening up and closing up tracks. I don't know if Bitwig has that same capability. Am I able to basically see the tracks like this and then just open up this one here? Or would my workflow make it so that, okay, I'm looking at this track here. If I want to change the volume, I no longer go up here, I then go down here, right? Small difference. But it's a difference. Yeah, you could just probably hotkey this. Then again, the interface starts to jump around and it becomes a little bit messy. But okay. It's also a workflow. And I agree about Ableton and FL having the browser on the left rather than Bitwig and Logic read noise on the right. I mean, I don't know. I think if you're, it depends all on how you started. I personally started with FL, which has it on the left. But I think if you're starting off now and you choose Bitwig to start off your like projects and your production, right? If you just get into production, then you might have good arguments to say why it should be on the right. Personally, I would see it in the sense that Ableton's workflow is very linear in that you get sounds here, you place them in here, and then you click on here to show all of the effects and set volumes. So it goes from left to right, which looks very natural. Obviously, you guys cannot see the camera is in front of it again. I always forget where the camera is. But I'm sure that you can get the same kind of workflow for like Bitwig. You could probably say that, oh, we go from the right to the left. We go from the samples to here, you place them in here, and then you go in here and make your edits and whatever, right? It's as long as there's some kind of flow to it, as long as it's not like you go from here to then there, to then there, to there, to there, and you have to go all over the place, which sometimes in FL it does feel like you need to do when you have to go to the mixer, that's a new tab, and then you have to go to each individual effects. Even a basic EQ is another window. So some stuff like that really, really annoyed me, especially when opening up big projects and all of the plugins just boom opened, right? And there was like 15, 30 windows that you forgot to close over the time that you were producing, and it just opened up. ProTube, Cubase, etc. Even after 20 years, I get where the hell is all of that. Yeah, I do see that the Ableton and Bitwig seem to. One of the things I like what I see in Bitwig and that I see in Ableton as well. Ableton has it even more. Everything is on the same page. There's no extra window apart from, okay, the mixer window. But how many times do you actually use this? I only use this ever to look at individual volumes here. This, which is something that I do maybe 5 times in a production. I could go a whole production just looking at this window here, and then all of my effects down below and my browser here. So that's very streamlined. Maybe Bitwig has that a little bit less because it seems to have 3 windows. But this might just be one of those things where if you open it up here, yeah, it just goes down below. So in essence, it's the same thing. You could probably just look at this screen and just by looking at the different things that come up here and the different things that come down below here, it's the same thing. Bitwig has really great multi-screen support. Okay. I mean, Ableton also has some kind of multi-screen support. I can hit Ctrl-Shift-W and then it opens up the session mode in a different window, which I can just full screen. Right, I can hit F11 on this. I usually have that on my second monitor, so I just go F11 like this, and then this would be my second monitor, and I could have this on my second monitor if I wanted to. But I never really use that. Cubase for 20 years, Bitwig is my Air Force One or my Artemis One. Yes, it seems like a very big step forward. I'm just not convinced that it's right for me. That's how I would. If I were to recommend anybody to choose between Bitwig and Ableton when they're starting out to produce, then I would probably tell them go with Bitwig. Because A, it's cheaper, and B, it's less annoying. It might be a little bit slower in some cases. It might be a little bit of a hassle to get around all of the features, the slight issues that we seem to have with the LFO tool, for example. Those things might take up some time, but I think in the long run, a new producer is going to benefit much more from a program like Bitwig than they're going to benefit from Ableton. If Cubase gets internal modulators, which I doubt it will become really a monster. To be honest, I cannot join in on that part of the discussion. I've never even touched Cubase, and I think having 3 DAWs installed on my system is enough for now. So I'm not going to do the same thing with Cubase as well. To be honest, this was everything that I wanted to do. This was everything that I wanted to try. We've done almost 4 hours of streaming, so I'm getting a little bit tired. I also have to film some videos for you guys, so that over Christmas you guys have something to watch. Only time I use Cubase, I even failed to run through trial mode. I've heard, not about Cubase, but about Dorico. Again, from Tentacruel, right? The guy that I mentioned before about design. He did a review of Dorico, and he had a lot of people like first time test Dorico. And Dorico is also by Steinberg. It's the notation version of Cubase, basically. The notation app version of Cubase. And Dorico, you had to like install the installer, you know, like how you get your native access and the isotope hub and all of that kind of shit. And then you had to log into that, and then you had to set up some bunch of different things. Like the installation process was massive. So I'm assuming that's the same way for Cubase. Exponential node operators. Okay, I'm kind of curious. Let's do quickly exponential node operators, because I'm not planning to do another Bitwig test stream for at least a long time. Because I'm, to be honest, not really achieving anything. Like, I'm not being productive here. This is purely entertainment, because I cannot save anything. This is just demo stuff. Okay, let's try exponential node operators. It asks me to have a USB key. Oh wow. It's 1995. Pick any instrument, make it a CLI. Let's take an instrument from Bitwig then. Polysynth. Make a clip. Control J for a clip. Please be longer. I'll put down a note. And now I should look for something. Here, operators. Select note. I'm assuming it's somewhere in here. And voila. Is this with randomness and stuff like that? Drag the little slider. This seems to be like randomness. The amount of splits. Then how to skew the splits. Sorry. Let's solo this. Doesn't sound like it's doing it. Ah, wait. Oh. And this is... Yeah, so this is... Oh, you skew it here. Ah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you would need to make like a patch that makes that sound a little bit better. So sustain down, no release. That's very cool. What's this? Is this velocity then? Ah, this is velocity. So you can have like the velocity ramp up and down. If I change this to go all the way down, I can just have it like ramp it up. So these aren't normal notes yet, right? I cannot yet edit these as if they were normal notes. I assume that there's some way, as you said, yeah. Yeah, I'm testing this. This is my first time testing it. Right click on note to convert. Slice at repeats. Aha! And you could potentially just do that again if you wanted to. This is some kind of chance in the sense that how often it gets played, right? Like if we set this to like 50 for all of them. Yeah, so Ableton has this same thing for sure. You will change for sure, knowing what music genre you do, you will swap. Yeah, maybe not. I'm not yet convinced. I've done almost 4 hours now, and it's not been a single feature that said like, okay, that's worth me paying the price, not just in terms of money, but also in time to actually make the switch. I will say that I'm going to use this to play around with and to toy around with in demo mode, and I'll just leave it in demo mode for as long as I can. Yeah, I think part of it, I'm gonna be honest here, I think part of it is some kind of bias against the fact that I own Ableton and I've paid for Ableton, I've spent the $700 or $750, whatever it is, that is Ableton suite, and it's not like I've run out of features in Ableton to experiment with and to do all of these things with. Because this, I think, not the exponential note thing, but there's a very easy way to just set this up with the arpeggiator, right? You can just have an arpeggiator in the MIDI effects, and then you play one note, and then you just unsync it and set this to whatever you want. It's not so precise in the sense that you cannot select how many notes and the skewing and all of that kind of stuff, but you can get the same results here, musically speaking. And that's really what I'm interested in. This is cool, but I don't see a high chance of me actually using this $400 worth amount of times for me to make that purchase, right? That some of the skew falls on the grid. Yeah. Obviously, you can. This is much easier to visualize what is actually happening with your notes, but it's not critical. And that's kind of my point. When I upgraded from FL to Ableton, what I saw was a huge potential in workflow upgrades, because Ableton, in terms of workflow, just looked a lot faster than FL. And 2, I don't have it here anymore. I do actually, wait, I do. 2 seconds. I had a mixer. This thing, the Novation Launch Control XL. It's like a little mixer, and this was not well integrated with FL and very well integrated with Ableton, and it came with Ableton Lite. This particular module doesn't work anymore because slider number 3 and 1 sometimes send out values without me even moving them. I think there's been at some point where there's been a little bit of dust or a little bit of water that has gone into the electronics, and there's like slight short circuits or something. But a few of the sliders are basically broken, right? They'll sometimes just send out a minus 50 dB event, and then one of the tracks in my projects just goes to minus 50. Which is not really what you want from a mixer, right? You want your mixer, you just set your mixer, and then it should stay there. I dropped it with the USB inside right before the gig. Yeah, that could be a problem. I mean, the build quality, it's finicky plastic, it's not the best. But this at the time was fun for me, right? I got this, I think maybe as a birthday gift. And played with it a lot. Saw that it worked a hell of a lot better with Ableton. Saw the improvements that Ableton gave me to my workflow. And then I switched over. So there was like an actual step up that was worth paying for, both in terms of workflow and the fact that it integrated more with my studio at the time. When I say studio, I mean the two Logitech speakers that I have here and that mixer and maybe this pair of headphones. That would be my studio. But that would be, you know, it integrated a lot more with the way that I wanted to work. I don't see that same jump here in Bitwig. I mean, again, there's cool features in here. Ableton should step up their game with the way that they handle plugins and all of that stuff. But the upgrade that I'm seeing here right now is not worth me paying the 400 euros for to actually end the time spent to relearn a DAW. As much as this is very much like Ableton, and as much as we all like to pretend that we can learn a DAW within a week, there is muscle memory involved, and that takes a whole bunch more to actually, you know, switch, right? For me, 200 euros. Yeah, because I would be able to get the student discount then, right? I mean, as I said, I haven't looked into Bitwig pricing. Only know what I know about the Bitwig drama when the whole Splittergate kind of happened. Yeah, that's my point. I already own a capable enough DAW which has a lot of problems, but it's problems that I've learned to work around. One DAW is enough, especially for students. Well, yeah, I mean, I run 2 DAWs, but the other one isn't as big of an investment. Right? Reaper is 60 bucks for anyone. 60 bucks is not something that, I mean, of course, yeah, sometimes you just don't have 60 bucks, but if you're going to buy a DAW and you look at the feature set and you look at the price, then Reaper all the way. There's no way that it can, you know, it cannot compete with any other DAW, right? No, I should say no other DAW can compete with that amount of features to price ratio, I would say. Because Reaper is immensely feature rich. Like it's a beast getting into it. And I only use it for the most basic forms of mixing. Right? I load in a few audio tracks. I don't do any recording. I don't do any complex routing setups. I don't do any send tracks. I don't do any the minimum amount of bus processing, all of that stuff. But Reaper, if you wanted to, you could just go on and on and on. Reaper is a mainstay in, it's like the main DAW in many professional recording studios. So imagine the recording capabilities that it has and stuff like that. I just bought an Ableton Push 2 the other day. I've been learning to use it with Ableton Lite. Yeah, as I said, all of the features you just mentioned, I have no idea what that is. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have no clue. It's getting late for me. I have to film. I have to make a few more videos so that you guys have something to watch during Christmas. So I'm going to go. I hope you enjoyed this stream. I hope that I wasn't too harsh on Bitwig. And I hope that we, the Ableton community and the Bitwig community, could reconcile some of the differences that we have, and that we can now all come together to, I don't know, start hating FL users, whatever. I don't know what's next. Now that the Bitwig and the Ableton people are no longer fighting, what's going to happen next? I mean, I'm sure there will be another Bitwig scandal in a few weeks, and then we can all go back, and you guys will have another pack that suddenly you need to pay extra for, and then you all cry. Thank you guys. Thank you for the stream. See you. Bye bye. I don't know when I'll be streaming next. Next Sunday I'll be at my parents celebrating Christmas, and so next Sunday there won't be a stream. Maybe the one after that, I don't know. We'll see. But I'll obviously announce it in Discord and wherever, and it will show up the pop-up whenever I go live. So hopefully that's not too much of an issue. Either way, I'm gonna go now. Bye bye.